Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so welcome to the AP Euro, the 4th annual Breakfast with Richey live review. My own students are here, and shout out to Hannah for bringing coffee. All right, yes, do whatever you need to do. Okay, I'm broadcasting. Y'all are doing what you need to do. Y'all eating breakfast. Thank you so much. Lifesaver caffeine has arrived, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we got 3 viewers. All right, that's good. All right, now we're up to 215. Okay, that's respectable. 573. Okay, so somebody's watching. Somebody's watching. All right. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're just kind of getting set up here. My students are, they're getting breakfast and eating and all of that kind of stuff. So we got our own little breakfast. Hey, shout out to Seneca High School AP Euro. All right. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, okay, so we're just kind of setting up here. And remember, tweet your questions, hashtag breakfast with Richey, tweet them at me. Of course, followers get priority always. And then people have been following my work a long time, and supporting me. And I appreciate that. I appreciate all the great classes. I don't know if Stewie's class is watching yet, but I just felt like I need to shout out to Stewie's class because they've just been so great. So Katie and Claire and all that bunch over there in Kansas City, Kansas. We'll be doing a few more things like that. All right, we passed 1,000 viewers, so people aren't even, I think a handful of people are up on the West Coast. So we're going to start kind of seeing what's out there. And, then we're going to set up and we're going to get started with this thing. All right. So keep in mind too, if we can send memes, okay, memes, just any kind of just funny pictures. I think if it's memes, funny pictures, and class selfies, like those are great. Tag them breakfast with Richey. Also, that's that. The thing is, should we make Harambe trend today? Like, should we bring him back for a day? All right. You know what? If you have a hashtag, should we give preference to RIP Harambe hashtags that are added to that?
Do I need to go get the poster from your room?
No. The poster stays in my room. But I mean, should we bring him back today? I mean, we should make that that trend because some of y'all are probably going to be RIP after this is over. Not my students, of course. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting there. We're getting there. All right. Oh my goodness. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, women's suffrage, please. Now, not suffrage. Oh gosh, Emily's like, oh, feminism. Wow, we get to start with feminism. And so, yeah, you know what? Let's ladies first. Well, wait, actually, she's not even following. We'll get to that later, or should we get to it now? Okay, actually, I just got a death stare. So feminist death stare. So we're going to go ahead and go into that, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead, ladies first, right? So let's go ahead and start off with women. Now, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, the big takeaway from the Renaissance when it comes to women is what? The Renaissance is sexist. Okay, if you could just remember, yeah, high five. The Renaissance, high bro five over there from the gentleman there. But the Renaissance was sexist, and so it's very important to note that. There were really no opportunities for women during the Renaissance. And, that's basically humanism. That's for the guys. Keep in mind that love poetry was typically written in the vernacular because women couldn't read Latin. They weren't taught to read classical languages. Now, a woman who was from a family of means would be taught how to read and write in the vernacular and how to understand vernacular poetry. But if you were a humanist and you were writing things for men to read, like, Petrarch's epic poem, Africa, that's something that would be important there. But if you're writing to Laura, if you're writing sonnets to Laura, then that would be a little bit, different. You would use the vernacular. Now, shout out to, speaking of Laura's, Miss Ortiz's class in Miami. If y'all are watching, quick shout out to y'all. Now, speaking of Petrarch, there was one question that came up that Romulus was tweeting. I've got an app, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all should know about that by now if y'all been watching. And so it tweeted basically the Renaissance. Now, of course, Petrarch was the father of humanism, right? I mean, he's humanism's daddy. And then he is, he's the father of humanism. They mean the same thing. Okay. So as far as that goes, that Petrarch found text from Cicero. He went around and he found old Cicero texts that have been neglected, that had been lost. Now, a lot of people put Plato. Now, the problem with that is that Petrarch is actually pre-1450. And the fall of Constantinople in 1453 was a turning point for the Renaissance. The Renaissance humanists, they only had access to Latin text. And Plato during the Middle Ages, like Aristotle was the one people studied in the universities in the Middle Ages, in the scholastic system. And so Aristotle is translated into Latin, but Plato was not. Plato was not very popular in the Middle Ages. And Plato really speaks to ideals and the human potential. So after the fall of Constantinople in 1453, we see a lot of Greek scholars escaping and going to Italy, and they're translating texts like Greek text into Latin. And later on, you've got people like Erasmus who can read Greek. So the later humanists are able to read Latin and Greek. You know, remember the emphasis on the original classical languages there with humanism, that of course women weren't generally taught to read. And so as far as that goes, Petrarch found text by Cicero, not Plato, because Plato is going to be introduced later. And of course, that brings, you know, the Renaissance to a whole new phase. Now, as far as that goes, really, if you're kind of Renaissance through Enlightenment. Now, one thing to note is that in agricultural societies, women work. Okay, women work in the fields, they help on the farm, that sort of thing. Like, there are people that have this idea that basically like women were just like, until like all of a sudden it was time to make munitions during the world wars, that women just like sat at home and, you know, cooked and cleaned and raised children. Like, that's, you know, when I read the woman essay like last year, it was just all the people there. And it's like, no, actually women did a lot of work on, you know, farms. And also remember during the Industrial Revolution, that women are, you know, were a big part of the labor force. Women and children have like the fingers for all of that textile stuff in the first Industrial Revolution. You know, you're working spinning jennies and all that. And, you know, women are very cut out for that. And women worked in these factories, lots of women, lots of children working. Now, as far as modern feminism, I would trace that back to the French Revolution with who? Olympe de Gouges would be one. Now, what about in England? Mary Wollstonecraft. So Olympe de Gouges, you know, because the French Revolution, what you see for the first time, you know, you see the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. So it's like basically all men have these rights. Of course, the Declaration of Independence a little bit before that, all men are created equal. And the, you know, Olympe de Gouges Declaration of the Rights of Woman, she's saying, look, you know, all these rights that you say that all men should have, all women should have those rights too. And that is where Mary Wollstonecraft publishes a Vindication of the Rights of Woman after publishing a Vindication of the Rights of Man, which she originally published under a pseudonym or anonymously because she wouldn't have been taken seriously defending the French Revolution. Of course, she was arguing against Edmund Burke. Burke said the French are doing too much too fast. This is going to get ugly. Sure enough, got ugly. Burke is offering a conservative perspective, yet Mary Wollstonecraft arguing from the basis of liberalism. First of all, to defend the French Revolution, and second of all, to defend rights for women, that if there is really a God-given right of life, liberty, and property, then women deserve all of these things too. Women deserve to be able to own property. You know, women deserve to be able to participate politically. See, here's the thing, that before this time, you know, women were basically, you know, seen as not fit for the public sphere because women are ruled by their emotions. You can see like pictures, like engravings, where it's got like the moon, like the full moon's out there and all the women are gathering because, you know, women get messed up by the moon and all of that. You know, there's one with like a woman, she's part woman and then she's part devil because it's like, you know, she could be a bad influence. I mean, think about Adam and Eve. You know, where would we be if, you know, Eve had not pressured Adam, who otherwise would have never eaten the fruit, of course. You know, so the thing is, that's now messenger people. I'm not advocating this. I'm just telling you how people thought. All right. So as far as that goes, you know, this idea that women are fundamentally unfit for the public sphere, and that even, you know, Rousseau, who's an Enlightenment philosopher, Rousseau argued that, you know, women in Emile, his book on education, that women should not receive the same education as men. You know, that they're just, women are different. And if we look at this, you know, through the rational lens of the Enlightenment, and you look at men, look at women, you know, a woman's fundamental purpose is to please her husband. And so she lives in relation to him. Okay. Got, yeah, all right. So not resonating with you over there, but yeah, not really. Okay. Not a fan. Emily's not a fan of Rousseau. Okay. So yeah, feminists hate Rousseau. Well, that coffee is hot. All right. So anyway, gosh, but at least, I need to get some caffeination in me pretty bad. All right. So yeah, I think she did that on purpose. She's like, yeah, let's get this hot as possible. Get him. All right. So, all right, passed up 2,000 viewers. Thank y'all, ladies and gentlemen. And so now we get into the 19th century. And of course, you've got feminism. Now, Wollstonecraft's feminism and de Gouges' feminism, this is what we would refer to as liberal feminism, because it is feminist in the, in the liberal context. Now, remember, liberal, you have to think about liberal in a European context. Like in the United States, we have a tendency to think about liberal as, left wing or something like that. But really, liberal means in a European context, economic liberalism, even today, means a laissez-faire economy, as little government intervention as possible, that we basically let the marketplace make as many decisions as possible. And then there is social liberalism, which is pretty consistent with the United States, that an individual should be able to, make their own decisions in life. So, your religion, you should be able to express yourself. So basically liberalism, the root word liberty. Now, if somebody's not so much into economic liberalism, they'll call themselves a social liberal in Europe. So as far, whereas somebody that's into economic liberalism and socialism, not socialism, but social liberalism, they would call themselves a conservative liberal, for example. And so as far as this goes, liberal feminism is really focused on political rights and the right to vote specifically. So those of you that take an AP U.S. history, possible synthesis here would be the Seneca Falls Declaration in 1848. You had the, the women's movement going on in the United States. Now, remember, when we're talking about synthesis has to do what? People. Well, it's more than a comparison. It has to do what? What is it based on? It's extending what? Your thesis. It is about the thesis. So people are like, oh, what's synthesis for this topic? And I'm like, I can't give you synthesis for that topic. I can give you some suggestions, maybe something that could work. But until we actually see, all right, until we actually see the prompt and we know what argument is being made, then we can't do synthesis, because synthesis extends the argument. Now, across the pond synthesis, for those of you who've taken U.S. history, you could talk about like, oh, the Seneca Falls Declaration and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, all of that kind of stuff. Now, as far as in Europe, one of the most important, suffragists was Emmeline Pankhurst. Okay, and she was actually quite entertaining when you look into her. Like, she got arrested several times. Hunger strikes. All of this kind of stuff. There's a photo of her being basically like manhandled, or would it be woman handled? Person handled by the police. What would we call that? She can be manhandled. Okay, Emily says she can be manhandled, and so she says that is feminist approved. All right, excellent. Okay, so as far as that goes, Emmeline Pankhurst like being manhandled by police, and so then you got that woman that's like trampled by the horse and all that. They did some really interesting stuff. But this is around World War I. Now remember, World War I is a watershed event for women's suffrage, because women had been involved in this total war effort. Warfare a lot of times, results in extensions of rights, such as, the right to vote at age 18 because of the Vietnam War in the United States. But, as far as women are concerned, that the total war effort, women were expected to participate too, and even worked in munitions factories. And so really this period between like 1915 and 1930, you've got a lot of European countries that are, giving the vote to women. Of course, this is also happening in the United States with the 19th Amendment. So sometimes with women especially, the across the pond synthesis works really well. Like basically what's going on in the United States around the same time. And so what you're doing is you're taking this argument and you're saying, like you're saying, by using a comparison, you're using that in order to say this argument that I'm making, it goes beyond my essay. Okay. And then beyond that, you are going to go into that you could go into the PS synthesis. Okay, PS synthesis is just taking it into the next period. Some of y'all run track. We've got a few track athletes, okay, which you run past the finish line, right? You run through it. You don't just stop when you get to the finish line. You run through it. And so that is important in the sense that PS synthesis just continue the argument into the next period and, run through it. But remember, it has to be something outside of the time and place of the prompt. And so that is extremely important. That is outside of that time and place, whether it is at the same time at a different place, the same place at a different time, or different time, different place altogether, but it's got to be outside of the scope of the prompt. So women gain political equality, around the time of World War I and shortly after. Now, I think in France, they had to wait till like the 1940s or something like that. I mean, France, in a lot of ways, like, Britain was an early industrializing country. France was one of the last, like, Western European countries to really properly industrialize, had an agricultural rural economy for quite a while there. And so as far as that is concerned, political rights, though, don't necessarily confer social rights, don't necessarily confer economic rights, in the sense that women still didn't have access to what we would call the professions, law, academia, medicine, these things that were, they could be school teachers, but as far as being professors and stuff like that, not so much. And so there were these professions that were typically closed to women and, CEOs, which even today, I mean, I think, at least in the United States, I think only about 5% of CEOs are women today. Is that around correct? Okay. So as far as that goes, the second wave feminism, which is after World War II, is really focused on, second wave feminism is focused on economic and social equality. So first of all, like equal treatment in the workplace, not being discriminated against, protection from sexual harassment. Also the control of, a woman's, privacy and sexuality and all that is in terms of access to birth control. That's something that is a big deal, because that's something that gives, women, more, control over when they get pregnant and basically control over their lives and such. And then as far as that goes as well, also we're looking into, let's see, okay, I just have a Rick Perry moment there, but essentially economic and social equalities. Inequalities. Let me go into Simone de Beauvoir, okay, who wrote The Second Sex in the late 1940s. Now, the second sex, instead of liberal feminism, this is existentialist feminism. Now, of course, existentialism rejects any kind of fixed notions, fixed objective notions of truth. Okay. So when it comes down to it, that's when you get into, when we have those discussions about, sex versus gender. It's like your physical, born sex versus your gender, and gender, being something that, is seen in an existential context is not necessarily fixed, but more of a fluid construct. And so it's like, how are women going to be, equal to men? Like basically Simone de Beauvoir writes that women until now have been seen as other. Like basically when someone imagines a human being, they imagine a man. And if you look at anything that was written before the 1960s, which of course today in like the Spanish language and other languages, like a co-ed group is referred to in the masculine sense, right? So people generically are typically referred to as he. Now, of course, today we see a lot more gender neutral language, but, before this, I mean, it was just anytime you referred to a human being in the generic sense, he. And a woman is seen as something other than your standard issue human being. And so as far as that is concerned, that's going on now. Of course, Margaret Thatcher is very important in the sense of being the first elected female head of government in Europe. Okay, so in modern Europe, she's elected. Of course, today you've got Angela Merkel, Theresa May, the second female prime minister of the UK. So women have served in in these executive political leadership positions. Now, most European heads of government are still men, but we just saw with with the French election, Marine Le Pen was a finalist in that election. That was the second time a female candidate had gotten to the second round of voting. Now, of course, France has never had a woman president. So, as far as, gender equality, just like in the United States, not something that's complete, but it's come a lot farther than it was. Is that yeah, a lot farther than it was. Okay, you don't want to go back like 50 years and like live. Okay, so not so much. Okay, so as far as that's concerned, that would be just kind of a good like review on women and just noting the change over time. And remember that women worked during the Industrial Revolution. One thing I forgot to mention, during the late 19th century, the Victorian era, that's where you've got the cultivation of this cult of domesticity, you know, the woman as the angel of the house and, you know, her role in terms of raising the family. And so really, it's almost like you see like a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of thing. Like, you know, it's not like it's a complete kind of thing like this. Now, also during the French Revolution, during the Reign of Terror, you know, women get, you know, I mean, they're getting their heads cut off and stuff like that, but they also get equal divorce rights. Now, Napoleon rolls these back in the Napoleonic Code. And Napoleon's like, well, you know, the only way a woman can sue for divorce is if the man has brought his mistress into the house. That basically infidelity is not, you know, grounds for divorce, but humiliating her is grounds for divorce. And so Napoleon, now keep in mind the Napoleonic Code, it's got some conservative elements about it. So it's not necessarily a, you know, a feminist, you know, kind of document there. All right, so let's go ahead and see what we've got here. And Anna, okay, so do I have any knowledge? Okay, do I have any knowledge for an APUSH project? Anna, the exam is over. I don't know if she's even watching here. Let's see. As far as that goes, hey Kristen, thanks for being in the session last night. Can I talk about modern art and philosophy? So Mackenzie, modern art and philosophy, which I've already kind of gone into some modern philosophy, existentialism, which basically rejects, again, fixed notions of truth. All right, any kind of fixed notions of truth or anything like that, that everything is subjective, that there's a great deal of subjectivity. Now, Nietzsche is somebody that's seen as, you know, a kind of proponent of, you know, existentialism, nihilism, perhaps, that there really are no hard and fixed truths. And this really, existentialism really takes off after World War I. Why is World War I a turning point? Before World War I, the world makes sense. We're making everything better. The Enlightenment, science, technology, reason, all of this is leading us toward a perfect world. Then we invent all kinds of cool stuff during the Second Industrial Revolution and then proceed to kill each other with it. What you got there? Is that live? That's me live on your phone. Okay, gosh, I mean, yeah, my students, I tell you what. All right. So as far as that goes, what was I even talking about, Riley? Nihilism. All right. Say what you want about the tenets of National Socialism, but at least it's an ethos. All right. Some people get that. Some people don't. Maybe nobody in here gets that. All right. So great. Emily, one day you'll watch The Big Lebowski, and I think you're really going to like that movie. All right. So as far as that is concerned, ladies and gentlemen, so nihilism, basically the idea that, you know, this idea of hard and fixed truths. Now, remember that Nietzsche was critical of a lot of things. First of all, Christianity. He wrote a book, The Antichrist, where he was like, look, Christian morality says, like, when, you know, think about the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Just like, how often does that happen? Yeah. Yeah, like almost never. Like the thing is, it's like blessed are the strong, you know, blessed are the strong because they conquer. Like Nietzsche's like, look, strength is what we should glorify here because that's what, you know, that's basically what is glorified by nature. Also socialism. Nietzsche was like, what is this nonsense? All right, as far as, you know, just basically like this idea that people can live together in communities based on like being interested in other people and their welfare and their benefit, which, yeah, I see laughter out here. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, you know, hey, what happened to my hand? It's invisible. All right, so yeah, it's invisible. All right, I should have gotten like a tablecloth or something so my hands over the table can't. But anyway, you know, it's invisible. All right, because thing is, the invisible hand of self-interest is working here. You know, I'm reviewing with y'all because, you know, want you to do well in the exam. Why? Yeah, Mr. Roberts sees that report, and you know, it's like, well, you know, Mr. Roberts, my principal, judges my performance on a lot of these scores and such. Okay, so as far as that goes, you know, that's Nietzsche. Like, look, let's think about questions of existence. Let's quit trying to come up with like all of these abstract notions of stuff. And so you've got Nietzsche, and then you have, you know, Jean-Paul Sartre, you know, who was actually the, you know, basically life partner of Simone de Beauvoir. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, y'all don't have to be here. Remember, we are all here on a consent-based model. You can leave anytime, come and go as you please. Don't make me ask you to leave. All right. So as far as that is concerned, Jean-Paul Sartre, who's really like the most famous of the existentialist philosophers. And basically, a lot of people said existentialism, you abandon all notions of fixed truth, and it leads people to despair. And, Sartre says, actually, you know what? That creates a great deal of hope, because you get to determine your own truth, and you get to make yourself into whatever you want. And so really this offers a great deal of freedom. Blank stares from our resident Calvinist over here, which, that is not yet. Existentialism is basically like the anti-Calvinism, so as far as that is concerned, a little bit about existentialist philosophy. Now, the other thing is that art, like if you think about like surrealist art, this is embracing the idea of the absurd. And that's something that, like, if you look at Camus, which it's a written test, Camus, C-A-M-U-S, but Camus, who is basically in his novels like The Stranger, The Rebel, those sorts of novels here, that he is grappling with this notion of the absurd, that before World War I, and especially even before the late 19th century, Nietzsche and all that, but philosophy, the purpose of philosophy was to lead us to truth. And in, modern philosophy, it's like, well, you know what, maybe truth is not the kind of fixed construct that we see. Now, also in science, when we think about the science of the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, Newton sees the universe as a machine. It works. It makes sense. Now, y'all still learn some of Newton's physics in high school physics, I believe. I don't really remember physics. E equals mc squared or something like that. 9.8 meters per second squared. I don't know what any of that means, but I just remember it from class. All right, so as far as that's concerned, Einstein's physics. Does the universe make sense? Is the universe orderly?
Yes.
Wait, really?
Yes. No.
That's partly grounded in like positivism, which is basically on observation. I mean, the theory of relativity is not like grounded on like the universe being like a machine.
It is. It's a machine.
Really? Okay, I'm not going to get into it with y'all on that, okay, because that's really getting out of my purview. I'm not a scientist, but there is, like, it's not as, okay, could we agree? I mean, we got people who are really science smart in here. Could we agree that it's less rational than like Newton's like idea? Like Newton's idea is very, very sensical, rational.
For the purpose of this broadcast, yes.
Okay, this is a humanities broadcast. Okay, yeah, if I ever do an AP Physics broadcast run, like, don't watch it. This would fail. Ladies and gentlemen, find what you're good at and do it. Don't try to do stuff that you have no idea what you're talking about. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, now futurism was another form of art. What's important to note about art is the invention of photography. My shout out to my friend Henry in Pennsylvania in his class. And so as far as that goes, when we look at art, that it's really art becomes, with the invention of photography, less about depicting the real and the literal. Now, of course, there's socialist realism, which, Stalin, likes this more realistic sort of art. But most, when you look into, dictators and such, they like this futurist art. So art is really more about, more about propaganda, more about expression. Impressionism is really like you can kind of see what it is, but they manipulate the colors. And then, of course, German expressionism after World War I, really in your face. Like, I don't want you to see it how it's literally depicted. I want this painting to evoke feelings, okay? I want this painting to evoke the kind of emotions that I'm feeling within you. So art becomes much more expressive. So it's like, Dada, which is anti-art that comes around after World War I. Emily, a fan of Dada? Yeah. Okay, so the thing is, which of course, that somebody mentioned we mentioned existentialism yesterday, and somebody said, well, yeah, just think about Emily when you think about existentialism. But basically the embracing of the absurd. And Dada is like, look, let's see, Wikipedia is not wanting to load this stuff. All right, so I'm on a school connection here, huh? Wikipedia. Wow. So, wow. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, just take my word for it that one of the most famous works of Dada art is, to the extent we can call it art, is the person takes the urinal and turns it on its side, signs it and dates it, and calls it a fountain. Okay. Well, I mean, why is it not a fountain? I mean, it's like, look, mom, I made an art, there you go. And so that's Dada essentially. which of course Salvador Dali, the surrealist artist, he is embracing the absurd as well. It's like, hey, why is it when I ask for a lobster, they don't bring me a telephone? Why don't we chill telephones? Why do we chill lobsters and not telephones? I actually find telephones quite warm. And, just all of these like existential, questions. Why do hot dogs come in packs of 10 and hot dog buns only come in packs of 8? Or is it the other way around? I don't know. Is it? I don't know. I mean, these big existential questions about life, that's going to be bugging you now, isn't it? So as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, now, shout out to, all right. So we've got Mr. Bobo's class in Fordham Prep. Okay. So, we've got, let's see, some other people. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Still thinking about the hot dog thing. I like basically, yeah. Okay, we'll worry about that after the exam. Okay, so Jake Rubin, Gail Graham's class. Okay, so glad to see that. And so as far as that, let's talk about a few revolutions here. All right, we've got from New York City, Jeter 7256. Shout out to Mr. Bobo's AP Euro class at Fordham Prep. Okay, wants me to talk about the Glorious Revolution. Okay, now as far as that goes, I think that a quick oh my Lord. Okay. Kyle is live tweeting, ladies and gentlemen. That is okay. That is, I don't think I'm going to recommend this follow. He wants me to recommend people follow him on Twitter. I don't think so. Okay. All right. All right. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you tweet a good enough meme, I'll retweet it. All right. So as far as that kind of stuff, yeah, MS back Euro. So as far as this is concerned, the Glorious Revolution. Now, the Glorious Revolution is in 1688, and it's the culmination of a lot of things. It's kind of hard to give the short version of that because the new monarchies. My friend Paul Sargent has a great video on the new monarchies. Hopefully, Paul will join us at some point. We'll see. I need to actually send him the link just in case he wants to join us. So as far as that goes, let's see. Let me make sure that he's got this for when he needs it. I got a few people might join me on this broadcast. So going to go into the Stuarts, the English Civil War, and the Glorious Revolution. Okay, so let me go ahead. Let's see. Where are we? Let's see, Paul. Let's see. Okay, going to send this link to a few people who might be joining me. Let's see. Okay, I don't know where he would be. All right, so Paul Sargent may jump in and join us a little bit. So basically what's happening with the new monarchies. Paul Sargent's got a great video on the new monarchies. And ladies and gentlemen, what's happening during this time is that the power of the monarchs, it's almost a proto-absolutism, like an absolutism prequel, because the monarchs at this time, this is in the context of the age of exploration, a lot of money coming in. Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, lots of money coming in. And so the money's coming into the royal treasury. They're expanding royal authority. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, right? Nobody expects it, but it arrived. Now, the other thing, a lot of people are like, they want to blame the church for everything. Like they see the church controlling everything. But what people forget, Riley, is that the Inquisition was basically the Dominicans were doing it, but they were doing it with the full blessing and backing of the civil Spanish authorities. Ferdinand and Isabella, the Catholic monarchs, remember in 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella expelled the Muslims and the Jews. They said basically we've had this pluralistic society in the Middle Ages, but now we are the Catholic monarchs and Catholicism is our religion. And if you don't like that, you can leave or you can die. But then you can always convert to Catholicism. Everybody in this country is going to be Catholic. No more of this religious pluralism that we've had here, now that they've finished the Reconquista. So they assert their authority over matters of religion. And so the Inquisition helps Ferdinand and Isabella to really get that control that they're wanting. So remember, that's driven by the state as well. So also remember, during the scientific revolution, the scientific revolutionaries aren't just challenging the church. Okay, they're challenging ancient scientific authorities, Aristotle, Ptolemy, or on your test, Ptolemy, or if it's a written test, remember, or Galen, the medicine guy, which a lot of people forget Galen. Just remember Galen Erso, Rogue One, scientist. So the guy, the doctor, in the ancient world, the Roman doctor, the humoral theory of disease. And so, then of course, William Harvey superseded that with his circulation experiments and all that. So As far as where were we? Yes, the new monarchs, Okay, so basically Ferdinand and Isabella, increasing royal power, decreasing localism, decreasing the power of the church and the influence of the nobles. And so we see royal power coming together. Now in England, you've got the War of the Roses. Henry VII is the new monarch of England, and he is also increasing his power. He's increasing taxes. He's building a royal navy, so he's increasing the size of the military, really setting the stage for what's going on there. And finally, the French monarchs of the Valois dynasty, they are able to basically get the Burgundians in line, that the Burgundians had been basically an independent force and not really subject to the king. So you see really this process of building nations. And this is where when we talk about going from like 1450 to the present. In 1450, we don't really have nations, okay, that are there. The Italian city-states, the German principalities. France is basically a patchwork quilt, full of people that don't really have a lot of responsibility to the king. And so we see here during the new monarchies, this building of a centralized, strong state that's going to give the setup to the absolutists later. And so during the Tudor dynasty, certainly, yeah, we might be able to shut all the windows if we think we got everybody here. It's going to be here. So the Tudor dynasty, we see the monarch's power increasing, which of course you can see Henry VIII, the son of Henry VII, is, acting as a new monarch, kind of consistent with this when he says, look, the king has control over religion. And so I'm going to join the Reformation for political reasons, not religious. And I'm going to confiscate all of the church lands because I'm the king and I can do that. And so then he sells the church lands, kind of inadvertently creates the same middle class that's going to cut off Charles I's head in the following century. And so as far as that's concerned, that's what's happened to new monarchs. And so under Henry and Bloody Mary and Elizabeth, and not forget Edward, he wasn't there long, but he was there for a little while. I mean, Henry worked hard for that son. A lot of heads rolled for that son to be born. I guess technically one. But anyway, so as far as that goes, rest in peace, Anne Boleyn, sitting up with Harambe or wherever she is. Okay. So yeah, let's see how many times we can bring Harambe into this. I really just want the meme to come back to life for a day. It'd make me happy. So as far as that is concerned, then the Stuarts come in. After Queen Elizabeth dies in 1603, you have James I of Scotland, and he is invited in to basically rule both Scotland and England. All right, so you've got a dual monarchy kind of set up here. And James I was big into religious uniformity. Now, what is particular about the Church of England, the Anglican Church? We were talking about yesterday, I think, with the 5 of you that stayed after yesterday. That we were talking about how, goodness, I tell you, I've got to get this caffeine drink like really quick. Okay, what is it? What is it we're talking? Like, we've got the Stuarts coming in. I mean, I'm just like I need to like chug this thing. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's some pre-workout. Okay, I mean, I'm really like.
Yeah, there was a question where Stuarts was wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, the Stuarts are insistent upon religious uniformity, and they don't want to work with Parliament. What we've got to remember about the Church of England, is that it was the least Protestant of the Protestant churches. There wasn't one Protestant Reformation. There were a lot of Protestant Reformations. And Sam, when I lose my train of thought, you just let me know. You just feed me back my train of thought, okay? The caffeine will kick in shortly, but I've just been, I've been broadcasting all week and kind of getting lackadaisical here. Okay, so basically Henry VIII left for political reasons, and the Church of England, the Elizabethan Settlement, is basically a compromise between Catholics and Protestants, that the church is going to be Protestant, but it's going to keep a lot of Catholic elements. Now, the other side of that compromise is that there will be religious uniformity and everyone will be a part of the Church of England. So the Church of England is the kind of like the Diet Coke of the Reformation. All right. It's something that is not quite, it's not really theologically or liturgically, like as far as the service, reformed. If you go in an Episcopal church and a Catholic church, you're not going to see like huge differences, especially if it's like high church Episcopal or Anglican. You're not going to see huge differences between the Anglican service and the Catholic service. And so as far as that is concerned, you have the Puritans and the Separatists. they are going to object to James's emphasis on religious uniformity because they believe the Puritans and the Separatists, they're Calvinists, and they believe that the Church of England is too Catholic. There is too much of this popery. There are too many of these popish additions, and that church is really not reformed. And they are advocating either let us reform the Church of England, the Puritans, or let us out of the Church of England to start our own church, the Separatists. And so this is a time where a lot of people leave during James I and Charles I rule in the early in the early 17th century. That's when my first ancestor got here. And, he went to Virginia, though. He wasn't with all the, all the pilgrims and all that kind of stuff. He was there before them, actually. But as far as that is concerned, people are concerned that, first of all, there's no compromise on religion. Second of all, the Stuarts, James I and Charles I, are trying to avoid Parliament. And so James I and Charles I, especially Charles I, he decides that, I'm going to try ruling on my own, because at the time Parliament was called whenever the king called Parliament. And so the monarch called the Parliament when they needed money. As long as the monarch doesn't need money, they don't have to call Parliament. And so Charles decides, there's this ship money. Now I've got to be very careful with my, with my diction there. Ship money. All right, that this was a tax on coastal cities to support the merchant marine, because the coastal cities benefited directly from trade. It makes sense that they would pay the tax, right? The interior cities really didn't benefit that much. And so what Charles does is he takes this ship money and he then imposes it on the whole country. And he's like, it's not a new tax. I just applied it to everybody, so I can do that as king. And Parliament's like, and so, they get into it about that. Finally, Charles has to call Parliament in the 1640s, and you've got the short Parliament that he just kicks out. He dissolves. The king basically would call Parliament, dissolve Parliament as he saw fit. And so this is really the big conflict. Who rules, the king or Parliament? Like, who has got the sovereign authority to decide what the law is? And so the Stuarts, especially James I, Charles I, J1, C1, Oliver Cromwell, C2, J2. Of course, some people do 5 fingers and Cromwell's like the middle finger. So whatever works. I'm not going to demonstrate that, here in the broadcast, but just whatever helps you pass your exam, people. And so, essentially, Charles has upset people who want more authority for Parliament, and Charles has upset these, Puritans and Separatists, these more hardcore Reformed Protestants, these Calvinists. And so these people get together and form this coalition, the Roundheads. So during the English Civil War in the 1640s, going into the early 1650s, you've got the Cavaliers, the supporters of the king, versus the Roundheads. And Cromwell, Oliver Cromwell, with his new model army, ends up, defeating the royalist forces. Charles I is captured and beheaded as essentially a traitor. So at this point, the English have cut their king's head off. That's making a pretty strong statement about who's in charge, the king or Parliament. But what they do is they form the Protectorate. So this is kind of the thing for any of y'all who read Lord of the Rings, like where you've got in Gondor, you've got the Steward. Okay, so essentially what Cromwell is doing is he's got the kingly power, but he's not calling himself the king. He is the Lord Protector, and essentially ruling for all practical purposes as a military dictator, and very bunch of lame laws. They cut down the celebration of Christmas. At that time, there were actually 12 days of Christmas. And the Calvinists, the Puritans and Separatists, Cromwell, they're like, this is too lit. Okay. It's like, really, when it comes down to it, Christmas should not be lit. Christmas is a solemn celebration of the birth of our Lord. And the best way that you can honor our Lord is to go to work that day. All right, basically the Calvinists did not believe in idleness. You've got this theory that historians argue back and forth about how much validity there is, but this idea of the Protestant ethic, that a Calvinist is about working hard, is about not displaying riches and all that. Think about the Dutch, ladies and gentlemen, who are basically controlling trade because of their emphasis on hard work. Now, of course, some of them as Calvinists would say that they're predestined. God has blessed them and chosen them, but if you're part of the elect, you act like it. So, if you're really chosen, then you'll work hard as well. It all works together, right? is that, okay, good. All right. So that was Calvinist approved. I've got a Calvinist, a feminist, I've got this whole row of experts over here. Yes. Close enough for the physicist and all of that. And of course, Riley, the memer over there. All right. So So as far as that goes, people get tired of this. Once Cromwell dies, they're like, let's get rid of this. We don't want his son to take over. Like, this is completely lame. They banned cockfighting, which of course, they're the last states like Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Arizona, I think, have banned cockfighting within my lifetime. And that's nice to animals to do that, right? I guess. But then of course, as Clemson people, we don't mind a couple of gamecocks tearing each other apart, do we?
I don't know.
Okay, not okay. Oh, no. Okay. Well, there we go. Even Emily. Okay. All right. As long as you don't eat them, right? Because that would be murder. Okay. Got you. Now, as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, so they decide that they're going to bring back the monarchy. So they invite Charles II, the son of Charles I, to come back and rule. And Charles II was known as the Merry Monarch, okay? Because basically, I mean, this guy was kind of like the anti-Puritan. He was, a lot of interesting stories. There's a Johnny Depp movie, The Libertine, which we could never watch in class. I think I tried to watch it one time. I fell asleep. But it's a pretty, Emily's like, how could you fall asleep during a Johnny Depp movie? Is that blasphemous? Okay, so as far as that's concerned, though, definitely not showable in class, right? It is a movie that is set in the court of Charles II, just all kinds of really scandalous stuff. Of course, there's the bawdy poet, Lord Rochester, who was like one of the characters in that movie, and he writes a poem about Charles II, which I can't read the whole poem, or I'd get fired, So I mean, but it's one of those things like the couplet that's typically repeated is, restless he rolls about from whore to whore, a merry monarch, scandalous and poor. Okay, and that's basically like the part that I can repeat. Charles II was always running out of money because he had all of these, he had 8 women and 14 children that he had to support. And he had to support, when you're the king, you can't just get them a little apartment or something like that. You got to put them up, okay? You have the king's baby, you're going to get taken care of. And so, okay, I don't know what that meant, but I don't even want to know. All right, so, okay, all right. So as far as that goes, Charles II was always running out of money, and Parliament basically redid his finances, so he was dependent on Parliament for money. That they got rid of feudal dues, and so then he's got an allowance, kind of like the royal family has today. And so Charles, he sees, hey, I need some money, and Louis XIV's like, I got some money. All right. And so Louis XIV is, gives him money and says, in return, I need to use the Royal Navy to attack the Dutch. And then, should an opportune time ever rise, Charles, you need to convert to Catholicism. Because remember that although Britain, and that's the thing, a lot of people, they act so shocked by Brexit. But when you look at, when you look at the history of Britain, it's while the continent is experiencing a resurgence of Catholicism, Britain is confirming Protestantism. While the continent has, is embracing absolutism or accepting it or whatever, the British reject absolutism. So when you look at this, it's contrary to what people tell you, it's the British still measure miles. They serve liquids in pints. They think how tall you are in feet. I think they weigh you according to kilograms or something like that. But the thing is, they're different. They're different from Europe. And so Charles is told, if you convert to Catholicism, opportune time, that would be great. And so Charles, when he's dying, I think this is the opportune time, he says, and he converts to Catholicism on his deathbed. I'm sure that was a very long confession. That confession must have been epic. I would have loved to have just been sitting there for that. But anyway, Charles II converts to Catholicism on his deathbed, but James II, his brother, now comes into rule, and James II is an open papist, as they call it, because Catholic means universal. We don't want to say that. Papist, the follower of the Pope. And had James just been content to be Catholic himself, may not have been a problem. But remember the premise of the Peace of Augsburg. Okay, if we go back to Reformation era, Holy Roman Empire, the Peace of Augsburg, the principle of whoever reigns, his religion. So, that doesn't technically cover Britain, but it's the same kind of principle that the people should be whatever religion the monarch is. Now, he didn't try to pull a Bloody Mary and make everybody be Catholic, but he did say that, what? Parliament has passed the Test Acts. Okay, the Test Acts were meant to confirm that everybody in a government position, in a senior government position, whether civil or military, is a Protestant. Okay, so So the Test Acts were about making sure that government officials were Protestant. Well, James II not only ignored the Test Acts, but he started to dismiss people who were Protestants, like his High Lord of the Treasury. He said, you know what, once he realized that he wasn't getting through, because you know how somebody's trying to convert you to their religion and you'll listen to them for a little while. And then finally you're just like, okay, I've already got a religion, kind of, you might want to back off. And finally, when he said that to to James II, you know, James II's like, well, I can't have a First Lord of the Treasury who's a Protestant when I'm a Catholic. That just wouldn't be appropriate. And so James is, you know, actually intervening on behalf of Catholics. You know, in the English Bill of Rights, it says he's even arming Catholics and causing the Protestants, the good citizens, to be disarmed. And so, you know, there are things that he's doing that are giving preference to Catholics. And so when James II has a son, you know, it's that's when it gets real. So as far as that is concerned, we've got that. Now, it looks like Paul Sargent won't be able to join us. I tell you what, my friends at Chapin High School, JC, again, thanks for hiring me. Chapin gets like all these shout outs because like they actually brought me, huh? Not Chapin? Are we playing them in baseball or something? We're not like, no. Okay, because I was like, oh wait, is that the team our baseball team is playing? And I'm all like, oh, Chapin High School. Like Mr. Roberts would not be happy. Okay, we're not playing Chapin in anything right now. Okay, got it. So as long as I don't shout out to Bishop England, oops, I just did. You know, so. Oh my goodness, no, not Bishop England, AP Euro, not if they're watching the ads. You know, I mean, come on. Okay, so remember, ladies and gentlemen, you know, now. Yeah, so as far as that, ladies and gentlemen, invisible hand, self-interest. All right. So when it comes down to it, not throwing shade at Bishop England, but you know, I do hope Seneca wins the ball game. But all the Bishop England students make fives along with these kids here. All right. So as far as this goes, that James II has again ticked off Parliament because he's openly violating the Test Acts. He's trying to bring back this divine right absolute rule that he is trying to govern without Parliament, and he's trying to manipulate parliamentary elections, cruel and unusual punishments. A lot of these things in the English Bill of Rights you see again in the U.S. Bill of Rights, you know, which, you know, it's not, you know, the American Revolution is basically a confirmation of all of these English liberties that the colonists thought that they weren't getting. And so it's, you know, great synthesis opportunity there. I mean, when you think about it, it's like 100 years later, you know, around the American Revolution, you know, did a similar thing that like, look, as English people, we have these traditional rights. They have been violated, and therefore we are getting rid of this. So Parliament invites William III of Orange, who was the stadtholder of the Dutch Republic, also a grandson of Charles I, who was married to James II's daughter. So grandson is Charles I, James II's daughter. He's married to like his first cousin once removed. They were both descendants of Charles I. All right. Now, it's not quite like Charles II of Spain, where Mother Nature just turns off the tap, you know, and it's just like, this has gone far enough. Huh? Yes, the Habsburg chin, the Habsburg jaw, yes. And so as far as that sort of thing, you know, they invite William of Orange and they say, William and Mary, you know, they say, we'll let you come in and be joint monarchs because, you know, Mary's like, you know, I want my husband to feel good about this too. And so they're like, you can rule jointly. And so William of Orange invades England, but there's no opposition to his invasion. And Parliament basically welcomes him in, offers William and Mary the crown. And in return, there's a quid pro quo here because William and Mary signed the English Bill of Rights, which basically confirms parliamentary supremacy and Protestant supremacy in England, okay? Because it basically says that Parliament will be able to determine its own elections, that there will be regular meetings of Parliament, that the king the king and queen relinquish the prerogative to rule without Parliament. So basically you've got that. And also the monarch will not be Catholic, papist. The monarch will not marry a papist. Now that was just gotten rid of until 2011. 2011, the Parliament finally got that off the books that required the king and the queen to both be Protestant. So now I don't know if they got rid of it just for the spouse or for the monarch themselves. That'd be interesting to look up. You know, as far as that goes, it may still be that the monarch is expected to be Anglican because, you know, I mean, that is technically the state church, but at least I know the monarch as of 2011 can marry whoever they want, even if it's a you know, a papist. So you've got parliamentary supremacy, Protestant supremacy. And also another thing about the Glorious Revolution is it is a shift in the balance of power, because Charles II and James II were allied with Louis XIV against the Dutch Republic. Now that William III, stadholder of the Netherlands, is king in England, in Scotland, then at this point, now the Dutch Republic and the English are together. Now, notice British comes about shortly after that. It's shortly after that where they have the Act of Union, and we'll start talking about them as British properly. And so then in the War of the Spanish Succession, you've got Louis against this large coalition. And imagine if Louis had still had, England and Scotland on his side, then, that might have turned out a little differently. Yes.
Okay, so we have to take this with a grain of salt. The article is really fun to read because it's on Irish Central, so that's interesting.
Okay, what do we have?
It's on Irish Central.
So it's an Irish POV, so we can't trust what the Irish say about the English. I like that POV analysis.
But they say that the monarch cannot be papist.
Okay, so it's so as far as we like the monarch, so the requirement for the monarch to be like more like we want just pull that. You know how to work blinds? Good Lord, I hope he's better at taking tests than working blinds. Okay, actually now I'm like looking like Harvey Two-Face, so let's kind of get a middle ground between that. It's like, hey, flip a coin. That would be kind of cool to do this thing as a villain. Is he really like okay? Like,
and then the Irish throw all this shit on the British because they sit there and call the papist rules about the monarchy
little more
discrimination.
Okay, well, and that's the other thing. It's like part of the okay, we'll just go with that, Rollins. When it comes down to it, actually, we can kind of let's tilt this. Help me tilt this table here. All right, I'm gonna get the all right. Yeah, it's just we need better light. We need better light. It's like broadcasting and bad light is bad taste. Okay, yes, I need that. Okay, like I want to be kind of more that sort of thing. Okay, excellent. Thank y'all so much, gentlemen. All right, so we've got a little more light now. Okay, natural light is good. Okay, natural light is good. So as far as that's concerned, ladies and gentlemen, it's just y'all deserve good light. Y'all deserve good light. Okay, which doesn't matter to y'all, but the people here deserve good light. All right, so all 2,311 of you. Does my group have any questions or anything like that? Come on, I mean, y'all are like my actual students. I probably should take some questions from actual students.
What are dates you think are important?
Okay, dates that I think are important. Let's do kind of a rundown there of important dates. Okay, that's a good thing. And I'll kind of give you a rundown. Now, one thing that I recommend as a great review tool, if you put into Google Europe then, Europe now, Richey. Okay, put in Europe then, Europe now, Richey into Google. You will get this Europe then, Europe now rundown. And basically what I've got here is a quick kind of review about, as far as, what was Europe like in 1450 and what is Europe like now. And we were talking about this yesterday. When we think about like modern Western society, the modern United States, modern Europe, what is it that we see and how's that different? So first of all, if we think about, so Europe then and now, I'm going to go ahead and put some things there. Now, let me go ahead and look up as well the handout here. Let's see, let's see. So actually, we're just going to Google that, Europe then, Europe now, Richey. And so if you look that up, you will see this this document on my website. I have a website, by the way. We're all aware of that, right? Painfully aware. All right. Yes, cringefully aware. Emily's, nonverbal say, okay, excellent. Yeah, which Emily, you're kind of like the star of the show today. Like they might have to meet you at some point. All right. What?
Always plug your website.
That's right. Okay, that's the thing. I mean, it's just if you don't promote yourself, who's going to promote you? So as far as that, well, of course there is Riley. I think Riley may be.
I'll do commercial for you.
Okay, well, you know what? I would appreciate that. You'd make a great commercial, Riley. Oh my goodness, I should do that. My daddy has a website. Okay, so my daughter wears a little kid shirt. Okay, yeah, I think that's going to happen. All right, so as far as that's concerned, let's go ahead and take a look at this. we're going to go ahead and share our screen here. And all right, Mr. Molden's class, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you what, this guy. Okay, so we got that. Let's see if Mr. Molden wants to, wants to say hey and join us at any point. So as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, which I'll be going to Cleveland County School District, do some professional development for teachers. That's going to be awesome at the end of the month. And, thank y'all for inviting me. So when we look at the Middle Ages, we see basically the three orders: the clergy, the nobility, everyone else. Now today, social inequalities in Europe are based on wealth and education, not necessarily hereditary privilege. Now, the midpoint is important as well, because the midpoint, is about basically how did we get from there to there. So traditional orders in 1815 are being challenged. Now, of course, that's the source of Metternich's conservative order after liberalism, nationalism, are challenging that old order of the old regime. So political privileges based on the nobility, church, land ownership, whereas the French Revolution largely abolished hereditary political privileges. And today, at least on paper, most Europeans have equal political rights. We go from aristocratic monarchies to parliamentary democracies. We go from no meaningful role for women in the public sphere to women in official leadership positions. Thatcher, Merkel, May, now we've got like 3 women that we can mention here. And so then religion was central to society. Now, when we think about becoming modern, we are also becoming secular. And so the church is still a force, in Europe, but at the same time, in Europe and the United States, we are predominantly secular, even though religion still plays a role. Now, when I was in the Netherlands, the Dutch, they will go to church on Christmas and Easter. They'll be baptized, for the most part, but that's basically about it. Okay, that it's like religion is not for most people in the Netherlands a part of their day-to-day lives. Now, I do want to go to next time I go, I do want to visit there's an area in Zeeland and some other areas where they've got the Calvinist areas in Dutch in the Netherlands, and they still wear very not quite the same as that, but they the women tend to wear long dresses. Everything's closed on Sunday. There are some things I've heard that they've got they call it the Dutch Bible Belt. It's like we live in the American Bible Belt. There is a Dutch Bible Belt, but outside of the Dutch Bible Belt, they tend to have a very secular society. Now, of course, a very secular society that gets Pentecost off as a national holiday. So it's really interesting how things work over there. That the Dutch, it's like they like their occasional holidays. So I want to give those up. So if anybody's watching from the Netherlands, thank you so much. All right. Now the thing is, going from isolation before the age of exploration, which is a very big turning point in European history, Europeans didn't really have contact with the world outside of Europe. And what goods and cultural exchanges came in, they were very limited. And so exotic goods, very expensive and rare. People, ate a very bland diet. Imagine eating the same things all the time, which they wouldn't have known any different. And somebody was like, well, wait, that's kind of the story of my life. I saw some looks there yeah, John's basically got it planned out every day. All right. So as far as that's concerned, subsistence-based agriculture, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what we see in 1815, we see that a global trade network is developed. Exotic goods are less expensive, more plentiful. Commercial agriculture. Remember the agricultural revolution, where we start to see that agriculture becomes a business. And so, which, of course, a lot of people didn't like that at the time. The little people are being kicked off the farms, driven to cities for the rising industrial revolution, but it's making agriculture more profitable. And so, really the economy is increasingly consumer-based, the influence of liberalism. And then, of course, today you've got globalization, where so much global trade. What is an exotic good? LOL. When you think about it, it's just all of these goods that people thought were exotic. Now it's you get cinnamon and it's just it's really cheap. It's just you go there and you get it, and there you go. And European culture is influenced by cultures from other continents. Which as far as government, you go from feudalism, which is very local, lots of local wars, conflicts tending to be dynastic and religious, to nationalistic wars, focused on the balance of power, continual continental warfare, and then finally today, European integration. Now, of course, we've seen recently some challenges to European integration and immigration. I don't think I necessarily misspoke, but nationalism seems to be becoming a force in Europe again. So the nation state is not gone, but it definitely is, seeing a diminished role compared to 1815. And then little ethnic diversity. And then after World War II, you've got, this wave of immigration. And so there is a lot more, ethnic diversity in Europe. Now, one thing I want to note about warfare is one thing about the War of the Spanish Succession, which I've got a video on the War of the Spanish Succession. And basically, when you think about the Treaty of Utrecht, which ends, Louis XIV's wars, then, Louis XIV is still thinking the old-fashioned way about wars, that wars are dynastic, wars are about, dynastic struggles and all that, expanding the power of my royal house. But then the British are like, you know what? Louis, a bourbon monarch can rule in Spain because, let's face it, Spain's not what it used to be anyway. As long as, remember, the Spanish, they had their heyday with their, with their empire, and then they didn't really develop their economy. Just like we were going through one of those multiple choice questions, that the Spanish were like, hey, we've got all this wealth coming in, and they didn't really invest in making things. And so then the Dutch started making things and trading. So did the English, the French to an extent. And so Spain's kind of left behind. So Britain's like, you know what? There can be a bourbon monarch in Spain as long as you don't combine the two monarchies. It's cool. But give us Gibraltar. Britain realizes that, you know what? It's very forward thinking, because Britain realizes that, look, the Navy is important, that we are setting ourselves up to become the preeminent naval power. It doesn't matter like what family is ruling what country. It matters where you can put your Navy. And of course, that helps Britain, all the way through like World War II, especially the Napoleonic Wars, where Napoleon can't invade Britain because of the Royal Navy and Admiral Lord Nelson, all of that kind of stuff. Battle of the Nile, Battle of Trafalgar. And so, that's important in that aspect. Now, did I finish my line of thought? What was the main line of thought there? Huh? Yes, we were talking about the Europe then, Europe now. So I wanted to talk about like dynastic wars versus like national wars and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, Team Marino. Oh my goodness, that is so great. Love seeing Team Marino. Glad y'all are watching from Miami, Florida. Yes, all right. So shout out to that bunch. Okay, so there's Karl Marx. If you're not following real_Karl_Marx on Twitter, you really should be. This guy's hilarious. It's just like it's as if you're having like real Twitter conversations with Karl Marx. So the big deal. What's the big deal with Ireland? They are Catholic with potatoes. Melanie, that that about does it. Now remember, Ireland gets their independence from Britain around World War I and all of that kind of stuff. Oh my goodness. Rosa has given up. Don't give up yet. They are just playing cards there. What's my favorite card game with a British spelling? That is very, quasi-European there. Riley.
We could go over some English Civil War material later.
I just did the English. Riley, have you been? What? Okay. All right. Riley, come on, man. All right. Napoleon born to party. I love that one. I love that meme. Napoleon born to party. Great stuff there. Oh my goodness. No, Nicole, you are not a disappointment. One of Boy Mom Gruber's students, one of my favorite AP Euro classes. Let's see, we've got Mr. Sieg, Mr. Seig. Let's see, thank y'all for the class selfie in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All right, so the apocalypse happens in 30 minutes. Just answer the question. What in the world are you talking about? Okay, the apocalypse. Wait, we've actually got a little time here. Can you go over? Let's see. What have we got here? Okay, so Protestant Reformation versus Catholic Reformation. Now let's talk about a few of these things. Let me go back into kind of the dates here. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So going into some more dates. And if we're going to go into that, we're thinking about Europe then and now, which I don't think Prague's analysis is going to catch on. But if we look at the political system, religion, economy, gender, and the social order. Now, 1453 is, of course, a watershed event for the Age of Exploration, because what happens in 1453, Riley? Fall of Constantinople. Very good, Riley. All right. And whoever Riley's little helper was over there, but the fall of Constantinople, which then, changes, the balance of power in Europe. Basically, the Ottomans now control the trade that had been controlled by the Byzantines. So this is really one of those things that, it motivates the Spanish and the Portuguese to start looking for an all-water route. 1517, we've got the Protestant Reformation. That's Martin Luther, the 95 Theses. Now, what we start to see is the beginning of religious pluralism in Europe, the breakup of the monopoly that the Catholic Church had. Now, let's see, Alexa is asking about the Protestant Reformation versus the Catholic Reformation. Now, one thing, the Counter-Reformation, ladies and gentlemen, which if you think about it, this Counter-Reformation or Catholic Reformation, it's got two meanings really, because obviously Counter-Reformation means, first of all, what? A response to the Reformation, a counter-Reformation, anti-Reformation, but also we're losing too many people. The ship is leaking. We need to plug the leaks. And so the Catholic Church really is doing two things. It is combating Protestantism, and also it is improving the quality of the Catholic product, the Catholic brand. And so they do that by fighting corruption and that sort of thing. So what they do is, first of all, they have the Council of Trent, which says, if there are heretics out there, the Protestants are heretics. Let them be anathema. All right, let them be anathema. That they let them go to hell, because Catholic doctrine, there's not a problem with that. So there is the affirmation of Catholic doctrine. And then there is the reformation of church practices. So, for example, Luther was like, what gives the Pope the authority to forgive sins? Well, the Catholic Church is like, well, you might want to read this little passage where, Jesus gives these objects to St. Peter. They're called keys. And St. Peter was the first pope. The current pope is the successor of St. Peter. What you shall bind on earth, I shall bind on heaven. What you shall loose on earth, I shall loose in heaven. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. We're going to start preaching a sermon here. So as far as that goes, gosh, not Calvinist approved over there. All right. So as far as that goes, the Catholic Church, the Pope has the authority to forgive sins. Now, what's not going to happen anymore is the Catholic Church will stop selling indulgences. So that is seen as a corrupt practice. The Catholic Church will do that. Now, uneducated priests, another problem. So the Catholic Church starts seminaries, places to train priests, which today, if you meet a Catholic priest, the guy's got a master's degree, all right, at least, because the Catholic priests are very, very well educated. So they're combating a lot of those things. And so Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order, is, engaging in this spiritual warfare with the Jesuits, and they found, institutions of education. So when we think about today, Georgetown is a Jesuit university. Of course, you've got a couple Loyola universities, several other Jesuit universities in the country. They specialize in education. And so the other thing they're specializing in is spirituality. Teresa of Avila is, one of my favorite examples there. Teresa of Avila, a nun who, you think like, being a nun is lame because they miss out on being married and, the benefits of marriage or whatever. Well, when you look at Bernini's The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, it's like it's basically, showing Saint Teresa's spiritual marriage to God. And she's not missing out on anything. That's about as far as I'll take that. But as far as that goes, that it is this, this intense spirituality, because Luther said, why does somebody need to confess to a priest? That Protestantism can offer you a personal relationship with God where you don't have to act through this intermediary. And St. Teresa's like, there's no intermediary here. And so, it's like the Catholic Church can offer an intense spiritual connection with God. And, basically you see that the Catholic Church has its A game going on. So remember the two facets of that, the affirmation of Catholic doctrine against the Reformation, and the reformation of church practices, which is basically these new religious orders and, the furthering of Catholic spirituality. Okay, so yes, you were very welcome, Eric, for the final cram. What is imperialism and new imperialism? Yeah, is our children learning? All right, so just remember, new imperialism is called new imperialism because of the age of exploration. You've got the first wave imperialism there with the Spanish Empire and the encomienda system, all of that kind of stuff. And then the new imperialism is, this period in the late 19th century, the scramble for Africa, imperialism in Asia, this period of the Second Industrial Revolution. All right, so we've got Mrs. Willard's class from MHS in Maine. So honored to have people watching in Maine so much. All right, so Jennifer, so glad you appreciate that. The 30 Years' War and the effect. Now, the 30 Years' War, you've got time, especially if you're not on the East Coast, to watch that video real quick. I've got a video on the 30 Years' War where I go through a thorough exposition of the whole thing. And remember the Treaty of Westphalia, which some people say Westphalia. I don't like to say fail. Don't you fail your exam. Okay, very good. Okay, all right, got to pass that exam. Don't you do it? None of y'all fail the exam. Okay, so as far as that goes, the Treaty of Westphalia, because that does not involve saying fail and it's a written test, right? So as far as that goes, the Treaty of Westphalia weakens the Habsburgs and the Holy Roman Emperor's control of the Holy Roman Empire. Voltaire said the Holy Roman Empire is neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, and that is what we get from this. That basically the Holy Roman Empire is no longer any kind of that's just not that big of a deal anymore. And so there's decentralization there. Switzerland gets its independence. Basically, the Dutch independence from the Habsburgs is confirmed here. And then France is really set up. Now, the big thing about the 30 Years' War, it begins as this religious and local war in the Holy Roman Empire. The intervention of Gustavus Adolphus from Sweden on behalf of the Protestants is something that is going to kind of swing the tide. And then the French, they see Gustavus Adolphus and the Swedes fighting against the Habsburgs. And Cardinal Richelieu is like, look, we learned this whole politique thing during the French Wars of Religion. And we're learning that, sometimes it's best to do what's best for the country instead of what's best for a religious group. And remember Henry IV, Henry of Navarre, Paris is worth a mass. So he converts to Catholicism, then releases the Edict of Nantes or the Edict of Nantes or whatever, the Edict of Nantes, if it's a written test, Nantes. And so basically this politique mentality, Cardinal Richelieu says, Gustavus Adolphus is fighting the Habsburgs, and France has an interest in weakening the power of the Habsburgs, who controlled the Holy Roman Empire, who controlled Spain. And so if their influence can be weakened, France then gives money to Sweden to fight their war. Now that's the Swedish phase, Swedish swords, French funds, okay? And then as far as that goes, then the last phase, the French phase, Gustavus Adolphus, rest in peace there. And, so he dies, the father of modern warfare dies on the battlefield, and then the French get involved in the last phase. Now this is, as John said, Swedish stacks, French fists, okay? And so basically the Swedes then fund the French. And so what happens here is like, whoa, this was supposed to be a local religious war, and now this is a political and continental war. And so, as far as that is concerned, this is really changing why we fight wars. And people are like, wow, we could fight wars because of the national interest. That makes a lot more sense. And so 1648, the Peace of Westphalia, that is one of your big years. Now that is a big three kind of period breaking year, because 1648 ends the Reformation. And we've seen questions on the exam that count on you understanding that 1648 is the end of people fighting continental wars over religion. Now, another thing about the Treaty of Westphalia is it's like, okay, we're going to add Calvinism to the list of valid religions from the Peace of Augsburg. And also, if somebody's privately practicing a religion, we're not going to mess with that person, okay? So the freedom of private worship, that basically this whole thing where, you had people like Philip II and Bloody Mary and all of these people trying to enforce their views on everybody, that's not happening. Now, remember, 1648, The English Civil War is going on. So essentially, while the continent is settling a war on religion, that the English Civil War was partly about religious differences, between the Puritans and the High Church Anglicans. And so 1648 is a period year. You should definitely know that. And of course, 1688 or 1689 being the year of the Glorious Revolution. And this is really like one of the first like triumphs of constitutional government, which today European governments tend to have some type of limitation, some more than others, but, even in Russia, they have a representative body, say what you want about Putin. He's democratically elected. Like nobody disputes that he has the majority support of people in Russia. Whereas, some people may not like him and he may not be the most liberal individual, but at the same time, that government does have popular support of the Russian people. I would say certainly more popular support than our government currently has right now. So, when you look at like their government's approval ratings versus our government's approval ratings, it's like we don't really have a lot of room to lecture them about democracy. So when you look at that today, then, you're looking at, these representative governments. And so 1688 represents a turning point there. So it is still, now remember, the Glorious Revolution and John Locke with the two treatises of government, the government is based on natural rights. Don't call this democracy. Okay, 1688, the Glorious Revolution, basically the power goes to the aristocracy and the so-called gentry. Now, remember the gentry class, this is the class of gentlemen in England at that time, and they're the ones who bought up all that land, when Henry VIII was selling it and started this commercial agriculture. And that's one thing about the English nobles versus the French nobles, that the English nobles were encouraged to invest in enterprise, which is part of the reason why, Britain experienced the Industrial Revolution before France, because French nobles, it was like, nope, you can only have the produce of your own land. You can't invest in business. Whereas a British noble was encouraged, hey, invest in business. They developed advanced banking practices and all that. But, basically, the government of Britain is still dominated by the aristocracy until, the 19th century. And of course, you've got the reform bills happening there, in the early 19th century. And of course, under Gladstone, that Reform Act in the late 19th century, that is essentially giving finally suffrage to the working class, which keep in mind that classical liberals were scared of the working class voting, because does the working class, are they going to go to the polls and be like, hey, I think the purpose of government is to protect a rich guy's property? That's probably not going to happen if you let the working class vote. And so, what you see there is Gladstone is basically like the last of the classical liberal, like the true classical liberal prime ministers, because once the working class is voting, then there is pressure on the government to provide more social services. Now, of course, Bismarck at this time is, creating the first social welfare state. Now, Prussia created the first system of compulsory public education. Then Bismarck brings about, he's got the Social Democratic Party who's saying, hey, we want a socialist revolution. Bismarck's like, nope, we're going to ban that party, but then we're going to start state socialism. This is part of Bismarck's realpolitik, that, we're going to have accident insurance, old age pensions, and stuff like that, health insurance for people. And, of course, conservatives and liberals were like, that's no good. But Bismarck appeased the socialists, and basically they were less of a contentious force because Bismarck was giving them some of what they wanted. And of course, for the liberals, Bismarck challenged the Catholics, the Catholic parties and his Kultur Kampf, they hadn't made peace with the whole separation of church and state thing yet. And so the liberals were like, yeah, go get the Catholics, okay? Because we want a secular government. Now, Bismarck also supported industrialization, which of course the liberals were very, very happy about as well. And so Bismarck just basically, it's like, okay, I'm going to appease this group at this time, this group at this time, and all of that. All right, so as far as that is concerned, we've got the rise of mass politics, and people have to kind of get around that in the later stages. Now let's see what else we've got here. Okay, let's see if we've got lots of people tweeting. Henry of Navarre, just mentioned him. Politique, Paris is worth a mass. French Wars of Religion. Yes, Kate Flowers, best of luck to your class. God knows you need it. That was you, not me. I'm not just telling them, oh yeah, your class, they need some luck. No, y'all need some luck. Good luck to y'all, right? Because I mean, that's good luck to my class. Shout out to my class. Yep. Yay. Okay. All right. So yes, Bryce Dexter watching in Kentucky, even though he's not even in AP Euro anymore. Excellent. So we got Hobbes, Rousseau, all that kind of stuff. Okay, which let's see. We see some memes. Utopian socialism. Now, one thing I would note about this is that Karl Marx, remember his socialism, some people think all socialism is utopian. Karl Marx said his socialism is scientific. Like basically there is a system for this happening that eventually, like Karl Marx looks backward and he says that history is a history of class struggle. And so he looks back and he says, okay, we had, the feudal phase, we're getting into the bourgeois phase. Some countries have had the bourgeois commercial revolution, and the next revolution is going to be the communist revolution. And that's going to be when the working class independently rises up and overthrows the bourgeoisie. Excited. Okay, I got like one person a little bit excited over here. Now, the thing is that Marx says the working class is going to rise up as an independent force, but it's going to be a mechanism. And so that is contrasted with the utopian socialists who were like, okay, let's just basically move out in the country and start our little collective farm and all of that kind of stuff. So Karl Marx is a scientific socialist. All right. So that's something that's important to note, that, he's got a scientific system. What he's proposing is not a utopia. Now, of course, later on, Lenin updates Marx. And Lenin, kind of likes to update things, as we saw, right? That Lenin says, you know what? First of all, there does not have to be a bourgeois revolution before there is a communist revolution. Now, of course, that's in Lenin's self-interest because he's trying to start a revolution in Russia, which had really not experienced that sort of bourgeois revolution yet. And so as far as that is concerned, do that. And then Lenin says also that the working class will not independently develop a revolutionary consciousness, that they need help from a vanguard party. Basically, you need this group of, bourgeois revolutionaries to basically let the working class know, hey, you're being oppressed. We need to organize you and all of that kind of stuff. We need to tell you what to think. So Lenin's got this kind of top-down model there. And so remember, Leninism is kind of an update of Marxism. And of course, Lenin also makes the update once he takes over the government with NEP, the new economic policy, that like, this collective farming that we've tried to put together with this so-called war communism, it's not working. So let's let the small farmers sell stuff. What's wrong with letting the small farmers sell stuff? Okay. And being involved in small scale private enterprise. So you see kind of this pragmatic streak. Now, of course, Stalin brings back collective farming. And of course, also starves a whole bunch of people and all that, the kulak class and Holodomor in the Ukraine and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so as far as that kind of stuff goes, let's see what else we've got coming in. All right. Little bit of Cold War. Now, something is, so Miss Carr's class, I've got a great video on Hobbes and Locke, one of my most popular, and so I encourage you to look at that. Now, Preet Patel says Cold War PLZ, 2 exclamation marks. What do y'all say? Do y'all want a little Cold War kind of PLZ exclamation marks? Okay, so as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, one of the big things about the Cold War, when we think about World War II as a turning point, okay? So the Cold War is, this conflict starts in the wake of World War II. Now, of course, the Allies, you've got, Britain, the United States, and Russia. If we want to include France, we can, but Russia's like, you know what? If you want France to get a sector in Germany, it's going to come out of your end, okay? Because France lost and we didn't. So, Pretty much. All right. So as far as that goes, hopefully when I have like French and Belgians watching, I don't know why they'd be taking the AP Euro exam, but anyway, we love them too if they're watching. All right. So as far as that goes, the Cold War is growing out of this. Now, first of all, oh man, Ken Lesage. All right. So we've got this listening to the live broadcast. Ken Lesage's class in Colorado. Looking forward to seeing Ken at the reading if he's going this year. Always glad to hear from y'all. So y'all keep playing your game and listen to this and all of that kind of stuff. All right. So the Cold War. Basically, you know, what happens here is that Stalin says that he needs a sphere of influence, right? You've got the Eastern Bloc countries. And so Stalin's like, hey, I need a sphere of influence. Now, although Stalin had this policy of socialism in one country, right? Okay, so socialism in one country, basically abandoning this whole idea of a worldwide communist revolution. But should we trust a communist? Never trust a communist, okay? And so the thing is, how do we know? Because what we're seeing is that Stalin is putting in governments that are sympathetic to the Soviet Union. You know, so Stalin, which of course the Yalta Conference, one thing came up is, you know, when they decided to partition Germany, they decided to, create the United Nations. The thing is that Britain and the United States, like the Allies, basically retreated in order to give the Soviet Union more of Germany. And so they were criticized for that, because what's going on, what they see in West Germany and Poland and Hungary and all these Eastern Bloc countries, which were not part of the Soviet Union technically, that Stalin is setting up these Soviet allied governments, these Soviet allied socialist governments, the so-called Iron Curtain, as Winston Churchill referred to it. And so, you know, when we look at that, that Stalin's setting this up. Now, Harry Truman, the president of the United States. Now, here's a turning point of World War II. Who is more involved in European affairs now? The U.S. It's like the U.S. is like, hey, everybody, we're here, and we're here to stay at this point. And so basically, the U.S. reluctantly got involved in World War I, then kind of pulled out, didn't join the League of Nations, kind of, you know, did Europe on its own terms. And then with World War II, the United States went in late once again. And, you know, so during World War II, you know, the United States, like, hey, after World War II, we got to combat communism. So the United States forms NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a collective defense pact between Western Europe, the United States, and Canada, that an attack on one is an attack on us all. Now, Stalin then organizes the Warsaw Pact, which basically is the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc countries. And if anybody attacks them, then there you go. Now, this is an example of the alliance system kind of working. You know, World War I, the alliance system worked until it didn't. Then somebody attacked somebody. But during the Cold War, none of these countries gets attacked directly. You know, all that you see are proxy wars. And so you've got NATO, but also Harry Truman's administration launches the Marshall Plan, or the European Recovery Act, which is giving money to Western European nations that are torn apart by World War II, put their economies back together, and also don't become communist. You know, we're giving them money in order to make sure that, you know, we know, kind of like Bismarck used state socialism to weaken the socialists, the United States is using money to weaken communist and socialist movements in Western Europe. And so, you know, for most part, it's working. Now, also, when Yugoslavia breaks off from the Soviet sphere, the United States gives them Marshall Plan money. So it's pragmatic, not ideological. You know, it's like, hey, Tito, if you want to run your communist government, Yugoslavia, and you are not going to geopolitically align with the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, we totally support that. Here's some money. And so the Truman, you know, doctrine, of course, you've got Greece and Turkey that are being defended by the United States. So this is the policy of containment, okay, that, you know, you have this policy that NATO and the United States, the allies, are going to defend against communist incursions. Now, Brezhnev. The Brezhnev doctrine is kind of the opposite of this. Now, that's where in 1968, you've got a lot of student protests in Western Europe. And then in Czechoslovakia, you had the Prague Spring. In Czechoslovakia, they tried to elect a liberalizer as president. And so when they tried to elect a liberalizer, Brezhnev's like, no, I know you didn't. And, you know, you just can't do that. And he says that if a socialist country, if a country in the Eastern Bloc tries to align itself with capitalism, tries to liberalize, then that is the concern of all socialist countries. And the Soviet Union will send, in military aid to the resident socialist government and put down the attempted liberalization. And so that's where, you know, you have the Brezhnev doctrine, which is kind of the opposite of that. Now, Mikhail Gorbachev, who then renounces the Brezhnev doctrine. So essentially, Mikhail Gorbachev says that he is, basically if an Eastern Bloc country elects a liberalizing government, the Soviets will not do anything about it. And so that's when you see in 1989 the fall of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany. Then you see in Poland, the Solidarity movement is elected to power. And, the Eastern Bloc, the communist governments start falling like dominoes. Now, the Soviet Union hangs on until 1991. And then that is where you've got the attempted coup, and then Boris Yeltsin is elected. And ever since then, Russia has had, a somewhat, authoritarian, but still democratic government that is not communist. And in fact, you look at Vladimir Putin, who's very, very sympathetic to, the Russian Orthodox Church and conservative forces in Russia. Of course, so was Stalin during World War II when he needed the priests to cultivate nationalism, which is, of course, kind of against the whole tenets of communism. But you do whatever works for you at the time. Now, Gorbachev as well. Gorbachev's trying to prop up the Soviet Union with what two reforms? Glasnost. Look out that glass right there, everybody. Look out that glass. You can see what is out there. Glasnost, you can see through it. So basically openness, openness, and then perestroika, which is restructuring. Speaking of, it's totally irrelevant, but shout out to Mr. Lincoln's class in Georgia. Great time there. I remember being with him in the redesign. Now his kid's like all, halfway grown up. I think kid's like 2 years old, but he's grown up in comparison to when he was born. So as far as that goes, that is, and my kid, my goodness, she's growing up fast. So anyway, can't wait to get this exam over with, go home and watch Rogue One with her. So that's going to be great. She's Mr. Daddy lately. So as far as that is concerned, Glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost, openness. So we're going to relax censorship and all of that kind of stuff. Perestroika, restructuring. Stroika, structure, restructuring the government. Now, the thing is that, basically, if you're going to do that, fix the government first and then allow people to criticize it. Don't just hey, we've got a really messed up government. Let's allow liberalization of the press. And, it just got to where, what Mikhail Gorbachev thought, that we need a dose of liberalism in order to keep communism, in some form. It ends up tearing the whole system down. Now, of course, in America, we like to say, America, Reagan, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we brought it down, but really this was really coming down. Yes, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall and all of that. But, we'd like to take some credit, but at the same time, their system was really, really messed up, and it was pretty much falling apart on its own. And, it's almost like, the big bad wolf in the house of, straw and sticks and that sort of thing. You blow on it, and then it's it's gone. Okay, so that's basically, and of course I think Reagan deserves some credit for realizing the weakness of that essentially the communist bloc is on its last legs, and so now we're going to push it over. So the external pressure, which I love Reagan's ash heap of history, so basically the ash heap of history. Like, he was given a speech to the British Parliament, and he said, together we're going to put Marxism, Leninism onto the ash heap of history. And sure enough, it happened. And so, very few people take that philosophy very seriously anymore. Even if people think today about regulation of markets and that sort of thing, the markets, the free market as the fundamental basis for the economy is largely, there's a consensus on the left and the right, for that. Now, of course, you've got radicals on both sides, but, you look at what just happened in France, where they said, the EU and, neoliberalism, as they call it, this free trading and all of that, the majority of French people, they're giving their consent to that. Now, there are some people that are, more nationalist, and they want more, less immigration, more economic nationalism. They want closed borders. But the thing is that, the majority of Europeans, now you've got the British with Brexit, but the British, they're different. Like, if you go and ask somebody in Britain, are you European? I would say at least a 50-50% chance that a 50-50 chance that they're going to say, no, I'm British. Whereas if you go to the Netherlands or to France, are you European? Yes, okay, like I live on the European continent. So when it comes down to it, we see a rejection, at least by the majority of this Eurosceptic mentality, but Euroscepticism is still a strong force. I mean, Marine Le Pen, you know, she lost, but a third of the French people voted for this historically, like, far right, you know, right-wing populist party. And so French nationalism is not going anywhere. She got twice as many vote, you know, twice as much of a percentage of the vote that her father got like 15 years ago. So I don't think that you've seen the last of that kind of politics. And so as far as that goes, 1991, we've got the fall of the Soviet Union, but we also, in addition to the fall of the Soviet Union, that is when the Treaty of Maastricht, as the Dutch would say, or, you know, Maastricht, if you can't do that Dutch G, guttural G, you know, Maastricht. The Maastricht Treaty was negotiated in 1990. Okay. You know, I know I like it when people are excited about the Netherlands like I am, but let's be attentive here. We've got about less than an hour before y'all need to go take your exam. And East Coasters, we're already losing some East Coasters. Hopefully some West Coasters will be joining us in a bit. And so as far as that is concerned, like in 1992, you have the European Union is formed, which is the culmination of several things that are going on there. You've got the European Economic Community, which of course at first is just like France, Germany, maybe Italy, I forget, and the Benelux countries, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. So they create this free trade zone, the European Coal and Steel Community. Now, you don't necessarily need to know like a timeline of all this stuff, like, oh, this year it was European Coal and Steel, then the European Economic Community, then, you know, the Treaty of Rome, all this kind of stuff. If I were you, I would have a couple of examples of something, you know, that basically I bring into the exam as precursors to the EU. So if you think about the European Economic Community, now also, the British have always had an uneasy relationship. You know, when people are like surprised by Brexit, you know, the British didn't want to adopt the common European currency. They got an exemption from that. The British also wanted an exemption from the Schengen Agreement, which allows free travel. Excuse me. So when you go to Britain, you still have to. Now, if you're from the European Union, you get kind of an expedited thing at the airport, but you still have to go through customs. Like the British are like, you know, we're not just letting people travel through this, you know, into Britain without being screened. So they don't take the currency. They don't take that. Initially, they declined to be a part of the European Economic Community. Now, then, when Britain wanted to be a part of it at first, France vetoed their membership. That's where you've got Charles de Gaulle, and Gaullism is basically about this kind of independent French policy. And de Gaulle thought, well, you know what? Like basically Britain is a Trojan horse for the United States. And, you know, for those of you who've done the DBQ on French identity, like one of the things that a lot of French people, you know, were very on their guard against, and I guess still are to an extent, is the increased amount of American influence. Okay. So in France, you know, people don't really necessarily speak English on a regular basis, where if you go to the Netherlands, you know, the television, you know, they're watching English, you know, English movies, American movies, TV with Dutch subtitles, but they're actually speaking in English, which is part of the reason why, you know, the Dutch know English so well. They need it to watch TV. Whereas in France, you know, you would have, you know, basically it's translated and overdubbed. So the French are very protective of their language compared to some other countries. So really Europe has become much more inclusive, you know, much more globalized, much more of a you know, much more of a community than it was. But of course, we still see, you know, a bit of nationalism in Europe today, especially lately, but it's not like a majority current necessarily. Let's see, Rachel, the Enlightened Despots. Remember, y'all, if I've got a video, okay, if I've got a video on something like the Enlightened Absolutist, Frederick the Great, Catherine the Great, Joseph II. Remember, Frederick the Great being the most influential, the most successful. We're talking about religious toleration, our principles, religious toleration, and reform of institutions. All right. Now, on top of that, they are patronizing the philosophes. Okay, now that's another thing we can measure there. And also, of course, they're absolutists. So Frederick the Great, civil service reform, you know, plant potatoes, use these Enlightenment things like, hey, potatoes have a lot of calories. Seems to be working okay for the Irish, at least at that time, right? And so Frederick the Great's like, plant potatoes, they got a lot of calories. And so he's furthering the progress of science. And then he's also patronizing Voltaire. Of course, Voltaire and Frederick have a falling out out. Remember, everybody, I've got an Enlightenment rap if you want to listen to that. And so Frederick the Great and Voltaire had a disagreement. And so Voltaire kind of, soured on Frederick. I think Frederick tried to have him arrested when he was trying to flee the country. Voltaire might have taken some books with him or something. Voltaire's kind of a trickster. Basically, if he doesn't deserve to be arrested for this, it's probably for something else he did. I don't know. So Frederick the Great, the most successful. Now, Catherine the Great, it was more style over substance. Catherine the Great patronized the philosophers, bought Diderot's library, then paid him to be the librarian. It's like basically, I own your library, but I want you to hold on to it, and I want you to be the librarian. I'm paying you a salary. And so then Diderot, she invites Diderot to come to St. Petersburg. So, Diderot is like, and she's very like, very cordial with Diderot, and Voltaire tells them how great they are. Now, Voltaire loves to be told how great he is. It's like, I know, right? And so at that point, Catherine's not really reforming things because she was dependent on the nobility. Remember, she was, she was complicit, more than likely, in the assassination of her husband, basically to become the Tsarina of Russia. And so as far as that's concerned, Catherine, now Joseph II, most ambitious, least successful. All right. So, Joseph's like, I'm going to free the serfs. I'm going to do this religious toleration, all that kind of stuff. He doesn't ask anybody first. He doesn't consult the nobility and get their buy-in. And so once Joseph II dies, they basically undo most of what he did. And Joseph even had on his tombstone, he wanted that. I don't know if they actually put it or not, but here lies Joseph II, who failed at everything he did. Remember, all of the absolute monarchs of the second, Frederick II, Catherine II, Joseph II, except we refer to the first two as Frederick the Great and Catherine the Great, and then just Joseph II, Joseph the not so great. Most ambitious, least successful, Joseph II of Austria. Okay, AP Euro kid, the Crimean War is basically, I don't know if we'd necessarily call like the Crimean War, a continental war, but it is a balance of power war. It's really the only war of any note between the Napoleonic Wars and World War I. And so we have during the Crimean War that people are forced to modernize. Okay, Russia's trying to basically take advantage of the Ottoman Empire. After 1687, the Ottoman Empire is in a permanent state of what? Decline, the sick man of Europe. And so Russia smells blood. Russia sees that weakness. Remember, Peter the Great was all about going into warm water ports. And so Russia's like, hey, we can take advantage of the Ottoman weakness. Now, Britain and France see this, and it's like, no, that's going to mess up the balance of power. So Britain and France join the Ottomans in fighting Russia. And what happens is a modernization of military practices, because the British were still, before the Crimean War and during, they were selling military commissions. Like if you wanted to be a general, you had to pay something. And so the British end up having an increasingly merit-based military promotion system. So, that is one of the big, innovations here. Of course, for those of you, our class watch Zulu, if anybody's seen that, you've got like the hereditary, like aristocratic officer, and then you've got the officer who's like, from a more middle-class background, what's that? The savage one. Yeah, that essentially, you've got, these two officers that are from these different backgrounds. And before the Crimean War, the ability of like your more bourgeois kind of officer, that doesn't have this aristocratic background to be promoted above a certain level didn't happen. But after this, so you see, more merit-based, promotion systems. So some modernization in warfare. Now, Sammy, as far as, Gothic art. Now, of course, Gothic art is, a medieval type of art and architecture. Now, one thing I'll note is that remember that the Romantics, they were all into the Middle Ages. How many of y'all, some of y'all like to watch those movies with like knights and stuff like that?
I'm watching Reign right now.
What?
Reign on Netflix. REIGN.
Okay, and who's that about?
Queen Mary of Scots.
Okay, the Mary Queen of Scots. Now that's kind of getting into early modern, but like when we watch, like every once in a while, there's like a King Arthur movie, right? And that usually, some kind of, A Knight's Tale. Okay, so the thing is, the Middle Ages, and of course, the Middle Ages movies, like, these knight movies always have some sort of romance, right? There's some kind of romance involved. This is the romantic sort of thing. Now, remember, romanticism is more than about romance, but it's like, you know, basically the Enlightenment is like the Middle Ages were garbage. And the romantics are like, what was wrong with the Middle Ages? You know, knights were cool, and like the chivalrous knight that goes in and he rescues, you know, the damsel in distress. You know, chivalry's great. Knighthood is great. You know, kings, it's like so imaginative and all that. You know, we can forget what it smelled like in a castle. You know, it looks cool.
Like half the population died of plague or anything.
Right. And basically you romanticize the whole Middle Ages, that like, you know, these medieval, you know, these romantic era, you know, romance novels, a lot of them set in the Middle Ages, the novels of Sir Walter Scott and people like that, you know, basically the Middle Ages were cool. We imagine things. What was wrong with religion? Neo-Gothic architecture in the 19th century is based on this romanticism and kind of bringing that medieval stuff back, and sort of a reaction to the you know, a reaction to the what they see as the rational and scientific excesses of the Enlightenment, which certainly I can identify with, being surrounded by these amateur physicists here. And, you know, it's like some of the stuff that they say scares me. Like, I asked Rollins what it's going to be like a century from now, and he's like, well, actually, we're all going to be underwater due to climate change and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's so scary. That's so scary and sciencey. And so, you know, it's like, hey, let's just kind of take a step back from all of that kind of stuff. So, oh my goodness, that T-1 hour, Ben Lippen School. You know, if y'all are, you know, you say Mary Stewart, who hired me in December, just sent me a text message, said that they are in need of some serious prayer. So make sure, yeah, it's like, you know, you really, at this point, you know, although we talk about like rational methods and all of that kind of stuff, use whatever is in your arsenal today to help you, you know, so as far as that goes, you know, Ben Lippen School, you know, praying for you and all of that kind of stuff. You know, it doesn't sound too rational, but then again, you know, it's like, how many of you looked up your horoscope lately? And so, you know, not so much. Okay, rational methods, huh? What's that? Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Please. It's relevant now because you got my attention. She doesn't feel like getting roasted. Okay, let's see. Who can I roast? I need to find somebody on the internet to roast. Oh gosh. He doesn't. Oh yes. Oh my God. Oh wow. I'm about to retweet this. This is so funny. Oh my Lord. Jaden, I tell you what, Jaden just, wow, meme. Okay, we're retweeting this. Y'all just got to see this. This is basically history repeats itself. It is Harambe as Archduke Franz Ferdinand. You know, so yes, so that is history repeats itself. I think we have a winner of the meme contest, okay? Rest in peace, Harambe, who cannot take the exam this year. Let's do this for Harambe and for Franz Ferdinand, basically the Harambe of Sarajevo, right? You know, so you've got, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Like, I'm trying to get it to where, yeah, I need to put, well, what I'm going to do is rotate it here. And so then, yes, but anyway, that has just made my day. I mean, this is the best AP Euro meme I have seen all season. Is that not a dank meme? Okay, so history repeats itself. Rest in peace, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. All Archduke Franz Ferdinand was just trying to save that child, and the Black Hand came and got him. You know, I mean, that guy, yeah. Yeah. It's like, John's like, I thought this was the AP Cincinnati Zoo exam, and I was ready to make a 5. But yeah, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was just trying to save children, and then those Serbian nationalists, you know, came and got him. All right, so as far as that's concerned, remember the main cause of World War I, militarism, the alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Now, let's not forget, a lot of times we think about imperialism, we think about the scramble for Africa, but we all, hey, Hilton, tell him good luck. Somebody tell him good luck. He just walked out. People come and go, and nobody says goodbye. Don Draper. All right, great. Yeah, it's a Don Draper quote. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so as far as that is concerned, yeah, does somebody tell him good luck? I hope he does well. An appropriate hand gesture or an inappropriate hand?
No, he did a thumbs up.
Oh, that was a thumbs up. It just wasn't his thumb. Okay, so as far as that is concerned, yes.
It was like
what's the dude's name? Yeah, Oliver's.
Okay. All right. So anyway, got to pray for you, Linda. Okay. So we got that, which I don't know. It's not even following me here. So as far as that, so I prefer, got it. All right. So let's see what we've got here. Stalingrad and its importance, not following. Let's see who we've got here. When you seize the means of production, Joma, that's really great. The means of production. That is excellent. Okay. Lewis wants me to roast him. L_nasty. I think that's just that Twitter handle just basically roasted itself. Yes, Isaiah, who is we love Harambe as much as I do. Let's remember that. Let's pass this exam for Harambe. What if we made that like a thing that like people were like writing on their exams? They were. Oh gosh, cross it up. R.I.P. Harambe. Cross it out. And there. Oh my goodness, did that just become a thing? Is that going to be a thing? Well, okay, so I just think remembering Harambe.
I'm not even gonna cross it out. I'm just gonna end my
At the end of someone's CPQ or LEQ, they were thank you for grading essays. How would that
Actually, if somebody mentioned me on their essay and I got it, I would have to pass that to somebody else.
Not you yourself, just in general.
Oh, thanking the great, hey, greater politicking, it certainly can't hurt you. All right. But the thing is, we're trying to get review here, ladies and gentlemen. But I think that recognizing Harambe today would be a great way to honor his memory and the memory of Franz Ferdinand. Okay. So, okay. Harambe is synthesis, Franz Ferdinand was just trying to save a child. All right. All right. So as far as that goes, let's see what we've got coming in. All right. So as far as that, so Harambe could be synthesis. All right. So as far as that, oh my goodness, Aaron, don't go there. Don't go there. All right. Kyle Farmer, thank you so much. Pencils out for Harambe. All right. So yes. All right. So I don't know if that might, that might have been a little close to home there, but Miss Mello's class, great. All right, let's see, AP Euro meme of the day, excellent. Okay, so let's see, ladies and gentlemen, looking for somebody asking a question. Nabil, I love you too. All right, so we've got, yes, do it for Harambe, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Oliver's class, if they're watching on the West Coast, do it for Harambe. Now, the World Wars. Now, remember the Treaty of Versailles? It was a bad treaty, all right? Now, Woodrow Wilson, ladies and gentlemen, Woodrow Wilson, tried to come in from the United States and we're going to do the 14 points. Now, the 14 points, ladies and gentlemen, of course, as you kind of start to trickle out to your exam, remember, though, your exam's like 10 minutes away. So, whatever you want to do, but it's all up to you there. I still need to try some breakfast. I still hadn't eaten anything, which caffeine, I drank some caffeine. This is about... All right, excellent. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, as far as that, the World Wars, we talked about the causes of World War I, and all of that. But then the 14 points. What are some of the 14 points, ladies and gentlemen? Freedom of the seas. Self-determination of peoples. Reduction of arms. A League of Nations. And remember, open treaty negotiations, because there are those secret treaties that people didn't know what was going on, including Italy, which, the Entente was like, hey, Italy, if you switch sides, we're going to give you a little piece of Austria. Psych, that's the wrong number. All right, that Italy basically gets screwed, which leads to the rise of Mussolini. All right, so as far as that kind of stuff goes, that the Treaty of Versailles ends up including Wilson's 14 points, but really focuses on punishing Germany with Article 231, the War Guilt Clause, which, contrary to the Congress of Vienna. The Congress of Vienna was about restoring the 1791 borders, making a conservative order and not punishing anyone. What you have as far as the as this is now, remember the Franco-Prussian War, the French are like, we remember how the Prussians came in and they declared their empire in the Hall of Mirrors. They made us pay reparations, and then they took Alsace-Lorraine from us. Hey, where are we going to sign this Treaty of Versailles? Hey, how about the Hall of Mirrors? Reparations, please, and then we will take back Alsace-Lorraine. The French wanted blood. Remember, for every dead American, there were 12 and a half dead Frenchmen, 8 dead Brits. So the French especially wanted blood out of this. And so the British and the French are like, we're getting reparations. Germany's going to admit starting this war, the war guilt clause, Article 231. And, basically the Weimar Republic, now also, Germany's like, oh, let's try democracy. And so the Weimar Republic, like they're trying democracy, and then their economy sucks with all the hyperinflation, so people are using marks as like, basically kindling and scratch paper and all that kind of stuff. Remember, if you brought something for breakfast now, which Sam, if y'all want to leave just a little something on a plate for me or something like that, great. But remember, bring all your stuff with you. Like, I don't want anything left here that I didn't bring. Okay, got it? So if you brought something, there's something left, bring it with you, because otherwise my hands are full and all of that. Hey, Emily. May the spirit of Mary Wollstonecraft and Emmeline Pankhurst watch over you today, and all of that kind of stuff. Yes, do it for Harambe, ladies and gentlemen. All right, for Harambe, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So as far as that goes, doing this for Harambe. Thank you for giving him his due. All right. Oh, that's funny. Okay, yeah. So basically, we've got an open window here, and my students say that they're leaving. As they trickle out, they're leaving by, like, Riley, show them self-defenestration, what self-defenestration looks like. Okay, and gosh, that was a third-story window, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, now he's on the run. He's like somebody that just got over the Berlin Wall. He's like, I'm out of here. Okay, Richie, you can't get me. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, as far as that kind of stuff, so. The interwar period, which, the U.S. tries to mitigate the whole reparations thing with the Dawes Plan. But then, of course, the Great Depression, brings in, the Nazis into Nazi Germany, into Germany and power there. And, of course, Mussolini had already taken power. But instead of making the world safe for democracy, you have the rise of totalitarian dictatorships in Europe. And so, and of course, the United States kind of, gets out of that. And, all of that. Let's see, where was, okay, I mentioned already the Byzantine Empire and the fall of the Renaissance, Lydia. So basically, remember that you have, the Age of Explorations prompted by this, because the Ottomans are a little harder to deal with trade-wise than the Byzantines, and also the influx of Greek scholars to Italy. So the later Renaissance humanists can read Greek in addition to Latin. Petrarch couldn't read Greek. Okay, so as far as, World War II, you've got the aggression by Hitler and Mussolini. Now, Hitler first goes into the Rhineland, which was the DMZ, basically testing things out. Let's see if, because basically Europe is determined, like the British and the French are determined that war, the Great War was the war to end all wars. And so as far as that's concerned, Hitler's banking on, they don't want another war. They're not going to attack me over remilitarizing this demilitarized zone in my own country. So he announces German rearmament. He militarizes the Rhineland. And he's like, what you going to do about it? And Britain and France are like, nothing. Appeasement. All right, maybe that's all he wants. And then he's like, well, you know what? Let's go into Austria. They're German speakers, pan-Germanism, the Anschluss. Hitler goes into Austria. No opposition, no battle for Austria or anything like that. Well, I'm just trying to unite Germany, self-determination of peoples, right? And so, once again, what are you going to do about it, Britain and France? League of Nations? Nothing. And then Hitler finally says, well, let's try this. Czechoslovakia has this section of the Sudetenland that has Germans in it. And all I'm trying to do is unite ethnic Germans. And so he's like, hey, and there's the thing too. The British and French, like the Allied leaders, they go to Hitler. They go to Munich, to have this conference. It's not like Hitler come over here. I mean, Hitler's like, let's confer here in Germany about this. And they're okay with that. And Neville Chamberlain, is there with Hitler. And he comes back to Britain. He's like, we've got peace for our time. Because Hitler, after all, he promises not to invade Czechoslovakia. He's just taking back the Sudetenland and kind of going back, taking their defensible borders. And so then Hitler ends up going into the whole country of Czechoslovakia. Never trust Hitler. Okay, never trust Hitler unless you're Japan, because, then when Japan and the United States were at war, Hitler honored the Axis Pact, even though I feel like he didn't really have to because Japan attacked the United States. But, Hitler generally wasn't really a man of his word. Surprise, surprise. And so then finally, now, although appeasement and the Munich Agreement, but Britain and France finally drew the line in the sand at Poland. And so, Hitler invaded Poland. Of course, he had the non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. Union, and Poland split up again, repartitioned. And, the French and the British are like, well, now we're going to war. And Hitler's like, well, I can do that, blitzkrieg. And so then France falls in just, very short amount of time. And I'm looking forward to that movie about the evacuation of Dunkirk. And so you've got basically the British fighting against Hitler in the Battle of Britain. One of the big things about the warfare is both sides were attacking civilian targets, so not just military targets. And so as far as that goes, you got the war and all of that. Stalin, we think about Stalingrad and Leningrad. The Russians, as far as the European war, gave up more civilian and military lives than any of the Allies combined. Now, you'd have to go into China to get more than that. But the British, the French, the United States, all of their losses are just a small fraction of what the Russians lost, the Soviets. And so Stalin was upset that like the British and the Americans are like, okay, let's first go to North Africa. Now let's go take care of Italy. And finally, in 1944, they'll open up a new European front in Germany. And so that certainly built some distrust up on Stalin's side. And so as far as that goes, of course, they make up for it in Yalta by kind of giving him his Eastern Bloc and all of that kind of stuff. But you see here where, essentially at the Yalta conference, they decide they're starting the UN, the United Nations. And then, they're going to partition Germany. And so as far as this, it looks like, that Kaylee is desperate. Kaylee, I've already gone over the Cold War, so you can kind of go back in this broadcast. You can go backwards. Kohan's fifth. Caitlin, I'm so glad that you reminded me to shout out to Kohan's fifth. That has been such an entertaining class, great memes and all of that kind of stuff. So we've got Caitlin and Troy and all of that. Now, brushing up on a little Bacon and Descartes. Alyssa, glad to help here. That remember, ladies and gentlemen, the simpler version of the three version of the scientific revolution is that Galileo and Copernicus and all them were challenging what? The church. But remember that the church is really just kind of the guardian of the scientific tradition that was set up in the ancient world. Ptolemy, it's a written test. Ptolemy, if you want to look at astronomy, geocentrism, Aristotle, the man when it comes to physics, heavy objects heavy objects fall faster than light objects. And they don't accelerate due to gravity. Aristotle, the authority in physics and also astronomy. Remember, he said the heavenly spheres were made up of the fifth element, not of actual matter. And Galileo's got his telescope and he's like, actually, there are craters on the moon. Empiricism, y'all. And so as far as that's concerned, and then, of course, Galen for medicine. And so when you look at this, that the scientific revolution is about not trusting the ancient authorities. Now, remember, humanism is like, hey, the Greeks, the Romans, they were the best. And so if they thought it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. And so the scientific revolution, now, Descartes, remember that the fundamental basis here shouldn't be faith. It should be doubt. That in all things we must doubt, even when it comes to our own existence. Now, using the old deductive reasoning, which wasn't dead, we still use it today, but it was already around. Descartes, he's like, look, how do I know that I exist? And Riley's pointing over here, and it's like, they should do that meme there. That meme. It's like you can't think if you don't exist. You got that kind of thing going over there. So as far as that is concerned, you can't if you don't exist, you can't think. What thinks must exist. I am thinking, ergo, cogito, ergo, sum. I am. That if I did not exist, I would not be able to think. Now that goes into Cartesian dualism. Remember, Descartes said, as opposed to like materialism, which is that everything is matter, Descartes said that we've got the matter side of things, but we've also got, bless you, like the mental and like spiritual like element as well, that basically, creation is dualistic. Now, remember also that when we're looking at Bacon and Descartes, they're both like, Descartes a devout Catholic, Bacon is a Christian. The scientific revolution, guys, they're not really challenging social institutions. It's science for the sake of science. And then,
Good morning.
Okay, we've got some announcements here.
Take a moment to recognize our track team.
Let's take a little break. I might grab a little breakfast. Congratulations, Seneca High School Track. Some of y'all are here. Hey, Seneca High School Track, everybody.
Jared Henderson,
It's
Cameron McCutcheon, Riley Ripcroft, Catherine Can, Drew Bob, Riley
Drew.
Moore,
That's my boy.
Gibson,
That's you.
and Dakota Morrow. Please give them all a round of applause.
I think you were screaming when they said Sam.
Yeah, they were.
It's like your sister.
All right, at this time, the baseball team, seventh place tomorrow at 2 o'clock. At home, please come out, be loud, and wear beach team. And those participants are Herman Wilson, Matthew Burgess, Jack Casino, Tristan Hudson, Coleman Smith, Petey Ridley, Ryan Moore, Riley Fletcher, Kate Hamilton, Bryson Whaley, Trey Hawk, Trent Siegel, Cole Bay, Jack Long,
John.
Ben Sykes,
John.
and Trent Lance. You can also give them all a round of applause.
John's not through eating. I can tell you that much.
Finally, we are also trying to pack out a spirit bus. If you are interested in going to the baseball state championship game number 2 at Bishop England on Tuesday, you can see Ms. Hollowell, that's me, in room 117, or Ms. Burris at the front office. Thanks, Bobcats. Have a great day. Good luck to all our athletes this weekend.
Thank you, Ms. Hollowell. Yeah. It is.
All right. John's offering to split something. Like, it's very generous of him. All right. All right. So as far as that goes,
We have some track on.
okay. My students, y'all be leaving probably in about 10, 15 minutes or so. So let's go ahead and let's see what's here. Okay, we've got, I'm checking Snapchat here. Fatima and her group. Oh my goodness, Fatima. I'm sorry, I call her Fatima. It's exam. My brain's dead. But Fatima and her group having breakfast with Richey. So great. Tom Richey SC on Snapchat. So we've got Anna watching and all. Okay, Mr. Nichols AP Euro class in the Philadelphia area. Shout out. So great. Pinnacle High School, Phoenix, Arizona, if y'all are up, okay? And let's see, Kiana. Okay, Pinnacle High School, one of my favorite AP Euro classes. Y'all have been great. You know, y'all are like a legacy group. Like, y'all watch my videos every year. Pinnacle High in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, as far as, let's see, we've got, you know, Renee and Katie and all that, Chicago. All right, my group, okay, my group. And, of course, Karina's class as well. So, my group, do you have any last-minute questions? Yes.
Any tips for taking it late?
Huh?
Yeah. Any tips for taking it late due to athletics?
You know, basically just, you know, you'll have to just kind of, I would make sure to do a little Euro every day. Don't let it go if you're taking a makeup exam. But those of you about to go take the exam, last minute questions.
Can I do a prayer circle for that?
You're ready. Now, student-led prayer, that's liberal and constitutional and all that kind of stuff. If you want to pray, you know, as in a liberal society, you go ahead and do that. But I'm not leading it because that would be, you know, that would not be a secular thing to do, right? All right. Will's like, my exam score has been predestined already. So, you know, he's like, all right. Okay. Not compelling. Don't compel anybody to participate in that. That would not be very, very liberal of you. All right. So anyway, my students are praying. If you pray, you might want to do that. Okay. I'm just going to finish eating this breakfast. And then I'm going to be basically by myself in a little bit. And just like, you know, we are going to be getting some more questions. Welcome people from the West Coast and all of that. Miss Dunn's class. Monica at Little Flower High School, AP Euro. Glenbard. Let's see. We've got here Glenbard East High School in Illinois. All right, excellent, excellent. We've got here Mr. Davis's class, huh? All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's wish Seneca High School AP Euro about to go do it for Harambe. All right, so we got that. All right, so ladies and gentlemen. All right. Yeah. All right.
I don't know where Danielle went.
Are they leaving food? I can't eat all that. All right. Okay, so gentlemen, y'all go in peace. Pass that exam, all that kind of good stuff. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's start getting some cramming going, okay? Because some of y'all are about to take your exam, and so as far as that goes, German unification, Ash, I already have got a great series on that, and I mentioned that today. What you would write about if you got any type of prompt from the Industrial Revolution from Caitlin Stout. Okay, now Caitlin, I would recommend, if you got time, it's a pretty short video, but it's a video on the second Industrial Revolution. And what I do, part of that video is I've got a graphic organizer where I go into the first and second Industrial Revolution and give you lots of DBQ, LEQ fodder. And so that would be my recommendation, comparing and contrasting the first and second Industrial Revolution. The first being going from hand power to machine power, the second going to more automation. The first being focused on textiles, the second steel, railroads, chemicals, automobiles, the steam engine. And of course, water power and all that in the first Industrial Revolution. Second Industrial Revolution, the internal combustion engine, which is basically, fully automated and what we think about as an engine today. And so those are some things, but I would recommend if you look up the second Industrial Revolution, you'll find that. Okay, so shout out to Miss Oben's class. Very good, Jordan. And, which I think I've already got that. The War of the Three Henrys, which just lump that in with the French Wars of Religion. Okay, I don't know if if you know that that's French Wars of Religion, some of this stuff is kind of minutia. Yes, very good. Okay, thank you, Kevin, for memeing. That's the meme that I requested, and we've got that out there. Okay, so excellent. Thank you, everyone, for the memes, and that is great. Okay, so hopefully Vivi has a chance at passing because of this. Oh my goodness, y'all are so funny. All right, little Matt Damon, little comparison here. AEA's AP Euro class under Namar have a shout out. Let's see. Sure, Adam. All right. So the thing is, Miss Oben's class in Tampa, remember, let's ask some questions here. Okay. Mr. Welsh's class, Mrs. Casper, if only we could get like AP scores off of shout outs. It's like, if that rumor were true, like if Tom Richey shouts out to me, I'll get a 5. There's probably nothing to that. El Dorado, you're welcome. I do get the Matt Damon once in a while. It's pretty funny. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, and Kevin not even following me, my goodness. Castiglione, you asked about Castiglione. Castiglione would say that he wrote the Book of the Courtier, which is a courtesy book. And speaking of courtesy, like following somebody before you ask them a question, that's the behavior of a gentleman, I think that Castiglione would say, or Castiglione if you're taking a written test, okay, because that's going to be easy to spell. If we could get that door, that would be awesome before y'all head out. And thank you Okay, well, can you make sure that the door gets closed? Just kind of hang around, make sure the door gets closed. All right, so as far as that, I would explain, Castiglione is basically the Italian Renaissance. Remember, the Italian Renaissance is more individualistic and secular compared to the Northern Renaissance, which is, and I'm showing you how to frame an argument for like an LEQ, if you had a comparison. So here's what I do here, that you have to compare and contrast. You have to show similarities and differences. And so as far as that goes, if you're looking at the Italian Renaissance versus the Northern Renaissance, that the Northern Renaissance, Christian humanism. Now, I would bring out as my outside evidence for the Northern Renaissance, Thomas More, in his Utopia, Erasmus, The Praise of Folly. Now, remember, a piece of evidence, somebody asked me last night, if I mentioned Thomas More and Utopia, is that 2 pieces of evidence? No, that is at tops 1, and that's only if you explain, what you're talking about. Name dropping by itself does not get you outside evidence points on the DBQ and the LEQ. You would need to explain how Thomas More's Utopia, exhibits the more Christian influenced and communal sort of societal influence of the, of the Northern Renaissance or Christian humanism. Thank y'all so much. Good luck to everybody. Danielle, you're going to do great. So are you, John Broom, Benton. All right. So excellent. Good seeing y'all. Y'all have a great time. Well, don't have a great time. Like, just be successful whether you have a great time or not. So as far as that goes, Thomas More's Utopia, it is, what if we ran a society based on Christian principles that weren't so individualistic, where there wasn't so much greed, and, that there was more conformity, there was simplicity, there's not an emphasis on wealth. What kind of society would that be? Now, of course, that goes against a lot of the currents in European European history when you think about the Italian Renaissance being about commerce, which is why they could, sculpt and paint all those naked people, because you've got, people who are bringing in money, Italian commerce at that time, the Medici, the church, bringing in all kinds of money. And they're using that to patronize the arts. Now, as far as Erasmus, the Praise of Folly. Now, the way that we use this as evidence is we say that in the Praise of Folly, Erasmus, although a devout Catholic, criticized the Catholic Church, particularly in regards to its wealth. And this is where, you really see basically Erasmus is using an ancient text. He's using the Gospels, which, he says, I looked in the Gospels, and the apostles, they were poor. And yet the bishops of the church, they're really rich. And so that is something that is, that's not in accordance. Okay. It's not in accordance with, the teachings of the apostles. So maybe we should try to make the church more aligned with this ancient text. And so Erasmus is using the Bible. He's using a humanistic analysis of the Gospels in order to try to reform a social and Christian institution to be more in line with, a Christian sort of civilization. Now, of course, Italian humanism, you've got Castiglione, the Book of the Courtier. This is like how to succeed in the court of a king or a prince. This is the sort of, man that you want to be. You need to be a gentleman. You need to be a good warrior. You need to be good at good at fighting. Now, I always tell people, some people disagree with me on that, but I always say, even though there tends to be some disagreement, that Castiglione, when you look at his, what he's saying humanistically, a lot of this stuff's still applicable, because when it comes down to it, if somebody that's, a man is like athletic and good at sports, that man tends to be more attractive, especially if he's got, an intellectual side. It's like if a guy can play sports and write poetry and have an intelligent conversation, even better. Now, the interesting thing is empirical research is backing this up now, that basically, while women tend to consider men more attractive if they have if they're creative, men, if women are creative, by and large, it doesn't seem to have an effect on men's attraction to women. But the thing is, Castiglione didn't have science. Castiglione's just got the classics that when I look through Greek and Roman, Greek and Latin literature, this is what I see as basically the keys to success. And so here's how to be a gentleman, how to be a lady, and all of this other stuff. So when it comes down to that, we've got that. So, shout out to all the AP Euro students in New York City. My man, Nathan Barden. Okay. AP. Oh man, the day of reckoning for my friend Nathan Barden in the Virginia Beach area. Shout out to the Goot Nation in Virginia Beach, all of the classes out there, okay, that were at the live event last time. So, so awesome, so awesome. So as far as that goes, I'm using Castiglione to note that this is basically how to succeed as an individual, whereas Moore and Erasmus are writing about this is how we would succeed as a society, guided by Christian principles. And then meanwhile, you've got Castiglione and then Machiavelli. Now, Machiavelli's look, I've looked at the Romans and how they were successful, and the Romans were not always the most moral people. The Romans always got what they wanted, however they had to get it. And so the prince is essentially, this is how to be powerful. This is not how to be moral. This is how to be powerful individually. This is how to rule. So it's a ruler's handbook, basically the Italian Renaissance, using humanist text to show you as an individual how to get ahead. Whereas the Northern Renaissance, and this is where I'm coming up with the thinking skill, okay, that I've got the argument, that I'm using this specific evidence to create an argument. And then what do the Italian Renaissance and the Northern Renaissance have in common? Well, what they have in common is humanism, which is, you could call it a philosophy, but to some extent, it's really not. That the humanists, there's no single humanist philosophy. What unites all humanists is that they're using classical texts, that they are all inspired by the writings of ancient Greeks and Romans. And that is what, is what binds it together. So in your thesis for the LEQ, if it's a comparison question, now the same principle works for continuity and change over time and for periodization, that you have to address both sides. Every turning point is an incomplete turning point. So how was it a turning point? How is it not? If it's continuity and change over time, how is it at the beginning? How is it at the end? And what changed and what stayed the same during the period? Whoa, got a little blurry there. And then comparison, here's A and B, and how is A similar to B? How is A different than B? And so that needs to be present in your thesis. It also needs to be present in your body paragraphs in order to earn the argument point. And in order to earn the first evidence point, you need 2 pieces of good evidence. So remember, Castiglione, the Book of the Courtier, explain how this supports your argument, okay? That it must be something that's not just mentioned, that it must be used to support whatever argument you're making. And then finally, synthesis, extending the argument beyond the time and place of the prompt, okay? So beyond the time and place of the prompt. So as far as that is concerned, which you could even look at like existentialism, which you know, almost sounds like to some people could sound like a you know, an oxymoron, but there was Christian existentialism, you know, like basically you've got you know, Soren Kierkegaard, who was a Christian existentialist who is writing about like, you know, the absurd and the idea that not everything's rational, but he's seeing this in the context of Christianity and taking a leap of faith. Now, Nietzsche was also an existentialist, but from a much, you know, he's writing, you know, the Antichrist and all of this kind of stuff. And so, you know, even existentialism had different branches, some of which were more influenced by Christianity than others. So that's something that you'll want to, you know, keep in mind as you prepare for the exam. So that's basically, I'm showing you how to frame an argument. If you're not taking your exam already, or even if you're waiting, make sure to look at the DBQ and LEQ rubrics one more time, and make sure that you know, because you don't want to have to read the directions. You want to know beforehand because you've got the rubrics. They're available on my website. Your teacher may have provided you with some rubrics. Remember what's expected of you, and you know, remember points 5 and 6 on the LEQ. They're hard to earn. Basically, point 0.5 on the LEQ, you know, the second evidence point. This is based on like using evidence like very persuasively, convincingly, going above and beyond. Usually, while it doesn't say there has to be more evidence never hurts, okay? Especially if it's relevant evidence used well. And then finally, like the last point is like this essay was just incredibly well argued. It's kind of what I call like a capstone point. It is the hardest one to earn, but you can make a 5 while writing a 4 LEQ, you know, basically a thesis, coming up with 2 pieces of evidence in the body paragraphs, and then, you know, analyze it, you know, providing analysis according to the thinking skill that's prescribed for you there, and then finally providing some synthesis. And maybe synthesis won't happen, maybe it will, you know, but remember, synthesis can come from outside the scope of this this course. So those of you who've taken another AP course, you may be at, you know, at an advantage. So we've got that. All right. So as far as that goes, Mr. Davis's class at Oxnard, very good. Neoclassicism and Jacques-Louis David. I love that. And that's actually, I gave a lot, you know, at my live events, I do neoclassicism as a live lecture. Now, Pinnacle AP Euro. Ask Zoe Frias about what she thinks about Jacques-Louis David's painting of Napoleon. Okay. Tell her that Tom Richey said to ask. Okay, so she is an AP Euro legend, just because of you know, the tweet that Layla made, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is like the funniest thing ever. You know, can I tell you something? You know, it's like, yes, you can always tell me something. I've got my screenshot ready. But what a great group of people at Pinnacle High School. And prom yesterday, AP Euro test today. All right. So as far as that goes, Brad Hoff, Mr. Hoff's class, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Hoff, for your support and your group in Texas, and Mrs. Garcia's class in Texas as well. All right. So interesting. Okay. So Matthew, that was interesting memeage. Not sure if I get it, but interesting memeage. Edison High School, Huntington Beach, California, having some bacon with your bacon. Okay. That is great. Thank y'all for watching in Huntington Beach. So happy about that from Edison High School. I've already talked, Erika, I've already talked about the Glorious Revolution. So, you know, we've also talked about some of these things already. So those of you on the West Coast, there are some topics that I've already talked talked about. I might even mention it again. Now, the Dreyfus Affair. Okay, so Nathan wants to know about the Dreyfus Affair. Now, the Dreyfus Affair, this is really like what's going on here in the late 19th century, you know, which if you go back to the Middle Ages, it's like the Jews were marginalized from the population, largely kept to themselves, you know, in a lot of cases wore distinctive hats or clothing. Hitler wasn't original. Hitler was bringing back something that used to be the case. And so as far as this goes, the Dreyfus Affair, that, you know, Jews had been European Jews. Now, keep in mind that 100 years ago, like 90% of the world's Jews lived in Europe. Now, 90% of the world's Jews are evenly divided between Israel and the United States. So what you have here is that, you know, you've got the advent of Reform Judaism, where, you know, Jews are abandoning a lot of like the distinctive practices, you know, not all Jews, but a lot of them are trying to basically, you know, I can be Jewish in the modern world and I can be a part of this predominantly like Christian, though secularizing European culture. And so you had Alfred Dreyfus, who was a French military officer, and, you know, he was of Jewish descent. And, you know, a lot of Jews, you know, it's not they were necessarily practicing. Like today, some people identify as a non-practicing Catholic, you know, but Alfred Dreyfus was a Jewish military officer. And when it became apparent that somebody had sold something, like basically given something or sold something to the Germans, of course, blame the Jew. And so Alfred Dreyfus is blamed for, you know, selling these secrets or this espionage, and he was found guilty with very scant evidence. And this was very polarizing. You know, one thing, if you've taken U.S. history, maybe the Sacco and Vanzetti trial, you know, which another thing where you had, you know, some Italian immigrants who were found guilty and they were executed for a murder that they may or may not have committed, but certainly when you think beyond a reasonable doubt. So, you know, it's not quite there. And so, you know, the Dreyfus Affair really divided the French population between Dreyfusards, supporters of Dreyfus, and anti-Dreyfusards, and people who were against him. And really, you had a wave of anti-Semitism. Even, you know, Edgar Degas, the Impressionist artist, is swept up in this wave of anti-Semitism. And eventually, now you've got Émile Zola. If you ever see a reference to Zola, who was a writer and journalist, J'accuse, or whatever, however you'd say that in French. I'm obviously not an expert in French. Luckily, it's a written test. So, you know, basically he wrote something defending Dreyfus. And so the French population was very much divided on this. Now, eventually Dreyfus was exonerated, but it took like the third trial. Like the second trial, they retried him and, you know, they found him guilty again. And so what happens here, the consequences of the Dreyfus Affair, is a lot of European Jews lose faith in the idea of assimilating into Europe, because it's like, you know, basically Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, wrote that, you know, essentially the Jews are trying to assimilate, but then there's always going to be some kind of anti-Jewish reaction. The Jewish population needs its own state. Now, remember nationalism. So what we see here is that Zionism is essentially Jewish nationalism. Now, a Jewish state will not happen until after World War II, not one of those included in the self-determination of peoples after World War I. Nothing for the Jews and nothing for non-white people. Remember, decolonization had two phases. Of course, World War I, you still have this age of white supremacy. And so, you know, the Germans and the Ottomans, we're going to take the Ottoman Empire and we're going to take the German colonies, you know, colonial empire, the German Empire outside of Europe. And we are going to put these into British and French mandates because these people are inferior and they're not ready for independence. How about Britain and France, since you won the war, the League of Nations, we're not going to give these places to you, but you're going to administer them as a mandate. Also, the British and the French, since they won World War I, they didn't have to give up their colonies after World War I. So basically, after World War I, you've got the first phase of decolonization, but it really only applies to the losers. Now, of course, you've got the internal empires that the Austrian Empire is broken up. You know, the Russian Empire, you've got the former Russian Empire that was surrendered during World War I at the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, where, you know, Lenin's government says we're pulling out of the war and we're giving up all of this land, you know, where you've got Poland and Czechoslovakia and, you know, a lot of these other countries are created. And you know, so Hungary gets its own country. Of course, a lot of Hungarians outside of Hungary. And so self-determination of peoples applies to some people, but not others. Now, after World War II, you see that the British lose India. And of course, the British, after World War II, they give up the empire and they're like, well, how would we like to have a Commonwealth? So essentially, the Commonwealth countries still, for the most part, like they recognize the Queen. You know, if you go look at Canadian money, the Queen appears on the money. Every once in a while, Canada will get a visit from the Royals or Australia. But the royal family and the parliament, they don't have say over what goes on there. And of course, you've got Commonwealth games today. When I was in grad school, you know, there were a couple times where I'd drive by and I'd see, like, you know, Australians playing against Indians playing cricket together. So it's like basically being, you know, in places that are part of the Commonwealth, it's like they share sports that nobody else shares. And so the Commonwealth is almost like a social club. You know, Britain for a while, I think they still do favor like Commonwealth countries for, you know, immigration to some extent. So, you know, it's this community of basically British Empire alumni, you know, the British Empire Alumni Association or something like that. So the British lose India. Also the French, you know, they've been defeated. And they're like, maybe we can salvage some of this if we can keep our colony in Indochina and keep our colony in Algeria. Doesn't work out so well. I mean, the poor French, you know, in the post-war period. So good luck, Jennifer, and Downey High. Love you lots. Okay, so Jennifer, hope this turns out really well for you. The Agricultural Revolution, Erica. Let's see, non-follower. I direct you to my video there. Great video on the Agricultural Revolution. Let's see what we've got here. Rookie wants me to shout out to Louis Muller, who is told he has no swag. Now, that's not my decision if somebody's got swag or not, but Italian unification key players. Okay, so as far as that goes, on the Italian unification key players, you've got Mazzini, Giuseppe Mazzini, who is part of the Young Italy movement and part of this sort of you know, this romantic nationalism that's really dominating the early part of the Italian unification movement. Garibaldi, the sword of Italian unification, he is the military leader, the leader of the red shirts. Now, at first, Garibaldi is aligned with Mazzini, but, you know, the Pope and the forces of Austria and France, they put down this Italian, you know, Roman Republic that was created. And after that, you know, even though Garibaldi doesn't necessarily trust Camillo Cavour, who's kind of like the Bismarck figure of the Italian unification movement, kind of applying these realpolitik principles. Garibaldi allies with, you know, with Cavour from Piedmont, Sardinia, which brings about the end of Italian unification. Now, the Pope is continuing to oppose Italian unification, and the Pope doesn't make his peace with the Italian state until the Concordat with Mussolini's government during the 1920s. And finally, the Pope recognizes Italian, you know, Italian sovereignty, while the Pope also gets, you know, Vatican City and all of that kind of stuff. You know, that is a really good question. Why didn't the Maginot Line extend along to the Belgian border? You know, that's one of those things. The Maginot Line, first mistake is that the Maginot Line was created to fight World War I again, which World War II was not the same war. And then they did strong fortification on the direct German border. And it's like, oh, well, Belgium can hold out for a while, just like they did in World War I. That didn't work out. All right. So as far as that, shout out to Miss Martin's class in Medina, New York. The lamb has been sacrificed. May you be pleased and bless upon me and my class the ability to pass. Antoine, okay, I guess he's not following, but he sacrificed a lamb. So, you know, good luck. Good luck. So we've got here Jennifer having those student problems. Hopefully when you look up during your exam and make eye contact. Oh gosh, that's really funny, really funny. So let's go ahead and retweet that meme there. All right, the War of the Spanish Succession. Ash, I would direct you to the video I've got on that. The War of the Spanish Succession, part of my series on Louis XIV's wars. Okay, so as far as that kind of stuff, can I explain the Napoleonic Code? Already have, you know, remember that it was a law code for all France, nationalism, and also brought France in a little more of a conservative direction. Okay, so little Henry VIII meme there. That's pretty funny. So we've got, let's see, Ashley and Carol Crabtree's class in Roseville, California. Can I talk about the Treaty of Maastricht? Which that was what happened, you know, basically started the European Union, which, remember, before the Treaty of Maastricht, You know, you had the European Economic Community and all of that, which was purely economic. This was purely economic. So the Maastricht Treaty was creating the European Union, which for the first time created a political and financial union. So this is, you know, creating the way for the European Parliament, the single currency, the euro. What happened in Sarajevo? The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I feel like somebody's just trying to quiz me. The Congress of Vienna, already talked about that a bit. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, that, you know, I've got a video and a rap on the Congress of Vienna. All right. Imperialism in Africa, the scramble for Africa, of course, is part of the new imperialism. And that's where basically everything except Ethiopia and, you know, and Liberia were taken over by European powers. And of course, this is the time of, like, you know, basically the Second Industrial Revolution, European technological supremacy, which of course, you know, they wanted to call, you know, racial supremacy as well. And, you know, Cecil Rhodes, a major figure there. Oh gosh, that's so great. That shirt, patty cakes. I tell you what, that's a follow back caliber here. They've got the, this Richey Bay shirt. I should reprint that on my website or something. It's so funny. But anyway, I just retweeted that, patty cakes. Y'all should, yeah, I think they're going to send me one. And I am so honored to be featured on y'all's class shirt. All right. So as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Rachel, for the meme. Let's see if we've got some more questions. All right. So Mr. O's AP Euro class, a lot of people want shout outs and good luck and all of that kind of stuff. Communism's not going to help you here. Miss Zvogan's class, how can I ever forget the Zvoganites? All right. So as far as that goes, if Miss Zvogan's class is still watching, you know, in Connecticut, thank y'all so much for your support and all of that good stuff. Okay. So Miss Martin, did I already get that? Independently studying, still confused. Wow. Okay. Could I do crash course? What? Oh my goodness. It's like, hey, Richie, can you do crash course? It's like, okay, buddy. That's like, you know, I don't know if he's trying to be ironic or something like that. You know, as far as that goes, shout out to Edison High School. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for the, oh, Ambar, you were in my session last night. Thank you so much for, you know, for helping me out there in Fremont, California. Best of luck to your class. Okay, so is that sort of thing here, history and memes. Alexander's of Russia out. Help. So, okay. Now, remember, we don't really need to know every czar of Russia, but in late czarist Russia, now, one of the things about Russia is even until 1905, Russia continued to exist as an autocracy. And so that's very important to remember that 1905, Russia is still an autocracy, you know, with no representative government. And that's one of the things when you're leading up to the Russian Revolution, you know, Russia's government is so far backwards, and then they're still industrializing, whereas other European countries have long industrialized, you know. And so as far as that goes, Alexander II in 1861, he freed the serfs. 1861, he freed the serfs. And, you know, that's kind of late if you think about it, kind of late. And, you know, then he had plans. Alexander II had plans, you know, to liberalize Russia's government, to create a state Duma, a representative body. But before he could do that, he got assassinated. Now, of course, his heir, Alexander III, you know, which Alexander I was the guy with Napoleon. But really, the names of individual Russian monarchs are not as important as noting that Russia continued to have this repression going on. Okay, this repression, this autocracy. Finally, the 1905 revolution, Nicholas II agrees to commission a state Duma. So although the Tsar still has like full power and authority, and I believe a veto, the state Duma is like Russia's first representative body in like 1905. So Russia's, you know, running way, way behind there. And then of course, World War I, that's basically like, that's just gone. Okay. And all of that kind of stuff there. Let's see. Gosh, they are Marx and Engels and all that. Okay. We've got our young communist club over there. Okay. Oh gosh, that's so funny. Okay. So we've got that going on. The memes are so great. And so, hi from Cali. Thank you so much. Explain empiricism, okay? Which empiricism, that is a big deal in the scientific revolution. Empiricism is when we establish truth by observation and the senses, okay? So empiricism is basically, I seen it, Galileo with his telescope, that he's looking out there and he's like, look, basically, I know that Ptolemy said that we have a geocentric universe, but what I'm seeing here and the calculations I'm doing here, the empirical evidence says that we actually have a heliocentric universe. Now, of course, later on, it's like the universe just all kind of chaos and all that kind of stuff. You know, no telling where the center even is. But, you know, the thing is that you start to see, like in the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, this focus on empirical methods, okay? Empirical methods of getting knowledge rather than just trusting authorities like the church and the ancient authorities. You know, we trust what we experiment with, we trust what we see. Now, deductive reasoning is the old-fashioned reasoning, which is used by Descartes, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. You know, what thinks must exist, I think, ergo I am. And so that's that. Now, inductive reasoning is where we basically get data points, a bunch of data points, and we put them together and generalize them. So basically, we start in inductive reasoning with empiricism. Like you're like, this empirical evidence says this, this empirical evidence says this, and we put all the empirical evidence together in order to form a theory or a law. But it must be based on not logic, but it must be based on observation. So when you think about a hypothesis, you know, you think about doing some deductive reasoning to start off, but you are going to need inductive reasoning and observation at a certain point as well. All right. So as far as that goes, I did a little bit, Megan, on the Industrial Revolution and all of that kind of stuff. Oh my goodness, a Dodgers fan, Megan. So glad to run into a Dodgers fan. That's a follow back there. It's always time for Dodger baseball. I've already talked about Romanticism, ladies and gentlemen. I think I did a little Russian Revolution already. So as far as that goes, trying to find something. Roseville, California, Oakmont High, Congress of Vienna. Remember Metternich, the conservative order, all of that kind of stuff. Y'all act like I don't make videos, people. All right. So the 1905 Russian Revolution, Troy, sets up the State Duma, which, you know, the State Duma, you know, you got the first representative government, you know, in Russia. Now, 1917, there are two revolutions. Now, remember, Russia was still on the Julian calendar. So they had the the February-March revolution. And so the February revolution, this is the revolution that basically Tsar Nicholas abdicates and the provisional government set up. Now the provisional government is just a mess and they're never able to get it together, which leads to Lenin and his very organized Bolsheviks, his vanguard party, that they take advantage of all these Soviets, which are these, you know, associations of like workers and stuff, and they build this organization. And so the October-November Revolution, typically called the October Revolution. Think about the Hunt for Red October, that Tom Clancy book. There's the movie with Alec Baldwin. And so, you know, the October-November Revolution, this is the Bolshevik Revolution. Now, of course, that starts in 1917, but you've got the Russian Civil War from 1917 to 1922. So you've got the 1905 Revolution, which sets up the State Duma, the 1917 February-March Revolution, which Nicholas abdicates and the provisional government set up, and they're trying to create, like, you know, a democracy of some sort that they can't agree on what type of democracy. And then finally, Lenin's revolution in October. Okay, so Miss Green's AP Euro class, a shout out. So as far as that goes, please wish Mr. Thomas's class good luck. There you go. And oh my Lord. Okay, that's funny. All right, so important popes. Remember, not as much like individual popes. Now, I would say John Paul II was, you know, the first non-Italian pope in a long time. He's from Poland, supported the Solidarity movement. Like John Paul II was very, very anti-communist. Now, remember, that doesn't mean that the church is full. You know, even today, if you follow like the things that Pope Francis says, the Catholic Church has never been fully at peace with economic liberalism, the profit motive, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So not just because John Paul II was very much anti-communist doesn't mean that he's like pro-capitalist, so to speak, or pro-economic liberalism, that, even today, the Catholic Church, doesn't really have, still hasn't made peace fully with economic liberalism as a foundation for, the economy. Because remember, that's based on Adam Smith. Where'd my hand go? It's invisible. All right. Hand's invisible hand. All right. And so basically, Adam Smith says, you know what? Human selfishness can be used for good. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Whereas to Christianity, selfishness is a vice. And you look at Thomas More's Utopia, we should be living in harmony with each other and all that kind of stuff. That's Christian. But Adam Smith is basing his stuff on not Christianity, not religion and faith, but on empirical evidence. Adam Smith is looking at empirical evidence like, look, you're not going to stop humans from being selfish, but everybody's self-interest together can come together. There was this one guy that said, because I sell an app, he was like, he saw an app ad and he said, this disgusts me, that if I cared about people, I would give away my app for free. And the thing is, I'd love to have seen the app developer's face when I went over to him and I was like, we've got this idea for an app and we're going to make it free. And I want you to design this for me for no money. It's like the app wouldn't exist. Adam Smith says the profit motive, creates these mutually beneficial exchanges. That enlightened selfishness actually leads to a better society. So it's like, the things that, last night, I had a paid session late at night. People thanked me for it afterwards, so the thing is, it's like, I won, they won, and that's the whole basis for economic market liberalism, which is based on Adam Smith's laissez-faire economics as its foundation. Now, keep in mind, it's regulated now to some places more extensive than others, but that's really the foundation of the economy, and that's not a Christian foundation. It is saying that, look, you can have that selfishness can be the foundation for economic progress. And remember, the Enlightenment is about not what fits into a philosophical system, but what is empirical. Just like Voltaire, we must cultivate our garden. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to spoil it for you. One day, hopefully, you'll read that line and you'll be like, okay, that is in one of the best books ever. Miss Smith's class from Orange County, California. Can I go over Louis XIV? Yeah, it sounds like you can't really do that without getting, without mentioning the Sun King, right? That's kind of a necessity. So Louis XIV, now, of course, Louis XIV, the Sun King, is bringing about royal absolutism in France. He's his own first minister. He decides, after the Fronde, which, the Fronde was a challenge to his rule early on. Louis and Peter both encountered challenges to their rule early on, which made them determine to strengthen the power of the monarchy at the expense of the nobility, of course, in Russian context, boyar nobility. And so Louis builds this system, the monarch had lived in Paris. And so Louis moves the monarchy to Versailles, to this grand palace, and gets the monarch away from the crowd, basically builds up the magnificence of the monarchy. Create a lot of debt, but at the same time, it's like it made France great. There's a lot of, controversy over Louis XIV because did he put France in debt? Was he wasteful in spending? Yes. But was France a more powerful country as a result of Louis XIV? Yes. Now, did it plant some of the seeds that would later be harvested, in the French Revolution? Perhaps. And so Louis XIV, Versailles, absolutism. Remember he rescinded the Edict of Nantes, one king, one law, one faith. So he was very much heavily Catholic, told the Huguenots, no more of that limited toleration. Everybody in this country is going to be Catholic. That whole whoever reigns, his religion principle. So Louis is, bring about absolutism, also a standing army of 400,000 people. So, selling titles to get money for the monarchy. So Louis, a natural hustler here. All right. So as far as that goes, we've got, yes, the dissociative fugal, whatever your name is there. So something about tea as well. Great. All right. The smell of tea. How did you get that as your Twitter handle? That is pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Find Tupac 2036. Very, very interesting thing here. All right. So I forgot to add a photo to something. Okay. So yeah, that's like a really blurry photo. Let's see. Oakmont High School. I think I already shouted out there. Let's see, Ashika, but glad to do that. Cavour used realpolitik because, it's more pragmatic. Basically, you know, he supported France in war because he's like, you know, if we support France, then we are going, I think in the Crimean War or something. But basically, if we support France, then France will support us, you know, against Austria, and basically using manipulation and, you know, warfare. Also, remember that while Bismarck, he wasn't wanting to unify Germany out of nationalist principles. He wanted to unify Germany, you know, basically under Prussian dominance. And then Cavour, it's like basically the king of Piedmont, Sardinia, ends up being the king of the United Italy. So Cavour, just like Bismarck, is using politics rather than, you know, an ism, rather than just nationalism or romanticism or liberalism. You know, he's trying to basically unite Italy on a pragmatic scale, okay, on, you know, in a pragmatic context. Now, let's see. Yes, Jack, that is very important to remember on synthesis. You can use U.S. history, world history. You can use any kind of history. You can use, you know, ancient history, you know, ancient Rome and stuff like that. So as long as it's anywhere outside, because all you're doing with synthesis is you are extending your argument to show that this doesn't just apply to this. My central argument can also be used to create a general, like, philosophy of history, so to speak. So if you're using, you know, ancient Egypt, if you're using U.S. history, you know, that's fine. Now, but remember, synthesis must extend your argument. It can't just be a comparison of one little thing in there to something else. That it is about, you know, it is about extending that argument outside of the scope of the prompt. Okay, so as far as that goes, you know, which the Dutch, of course, mainly known for their innovations with the stock market. They had one of the first joint stock markets. They were very influential in trade. They had these low shipping rates, and the Dutch realized, you know what, we'll trade stuff. And this is kind of some of the stuff that informs Adam Smith. That it's like, look, the Dutch are like trading all over the place, where other people are trying to like make something and export it and increase their precious metals, mercantilism. And Adam Smith sees this empiricism, and, you know, as far as you know, as far as that kind of stuff. All right, San Juan Hills High School. The revolutions of 1838 or 1848, Ian, I've already got a video on that. Remember that they were failed revolutions. It was a temporary challenge to Metternich's conservative order. He fled from Austria, but then he came back. It was put down. France, the German states, and Italy are affected. Britain and Russia are not, you know, which Britain because their government was responsive, Russia for the opposite reason because their government was so oppressive. And so as far as that kind of stuff there, thank you, Micah, Wilcox, Davis, Edika, Atticus, Evan, and Harrison for the recent follows. Okay, so we've got a few things there. Now it is noon here where I am, and so Ventura High School. Any tips to approach post-World War II history? It's very important to kind of note some, you know, some of the major things. I've got a video. If you put in Tom Richey post-World War II, if you're on the West Coast, you have time to watch it. The Cold War, second wave feminism, Thatcherism. Now it's important to note Thatcher was a liberal conservative. You know, you can say like, you know, socially a conservative, economically a liberal. She was into challenging the power of the labor unions, deregulation. Now, the irony is that the first female head of state in Europe, which you actually see this, like Angela Merkel is actually like right of center, you know, in a lot of respects, you know, so is Theresa May. And so Margaret Thatcher, it's like, you know, the first female head of state was, you know, from the, you know, conservative party. You know, you wouldn't really put in Margaret Thatcher with like the, you know, the feminist movement, so to speak, but in a lot of ways it is the culmination of that. Thatcherism was socially conservative, traditional values, anti-communist, very, very close with Ronald Reagan. You can see pictures of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher dancing at a ball together. You know, really, really good friends, cooperation with the United States, anti-communist, for deregulating and challenging the power of labor unions that had been around before that. So Thatcherism, you know, has a lot of components. The other one is Euroscepticism. Margaret Thatcher, when she said, do we want the European Union and this and this and this? Do we want a common currency? Do we want a common government? No, no, no. And so, you know, Thatcher, you know, as long as she was prime minister, like the the UK didn't join the European Union. It was under John Major after her, who had more, sympathies with Europe. But then, of course, they went in with all of their special exceptions, and now it looks like they're on the way out. Mr. Let's see, we've got, gosh, people not even following. Somebody needs to make a meme like when non-followers ask for shout outs. Like, I can't even press the follow button, but I want you to do a shout out. Remember Castiglione, the Book of the Courtier, a courtesy book, an etiquette manual, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got the fall of the USSR. Claire, I've already kind of, noted the fall of the USSR. Remember Gorbachev, Glasnost, Perestroika, all those were attempts to save the system. It actually continued, undoing its demise. Voltaire. Now, remember, when it comes to Voltaire, Voltaire is our most famous person in the, in the Enlightenment. And Voltaire, which I've got a video on Voltaire on religion, okay, which he was a critic of Christianity. Now, he was equally a critic of atheism. Voltaire was a deist. That the Enlightenment, like if you ask Voltaire, do you have faith in God? Voltaire would say, I don't have faith in God. I can basically look at nature and tell he'd exist. You'd have to be an idiot to say God doesn't exist when you look at this orderly Newtonian universe. Voltaire was very much tied to Newtonian physics, which was like, hey, the idea of a creator made a lot of sense with this sort of physics because, Newton's universe was orderly, worked like a machine. And so instead of having like a revealed religion, Voltaire and a lot of the philosophers, they didn't like the idea of having a sacred text that was revealed to like one person or small group or prophet, that basically they believed in this system of like natural religion where, you can look at nature and you can see, well, there's a benevolent God who has given us what we need to improve society. He's not really intervening. There are no miracles. It's like, you see miracles in the Bible, but have you ever really seen something like that? It's really based on this empiricism, this rational scientific mentality and a rational scientific approach to religion. And so deism. Also, Voltaire is, of course, the Enlightenment is about freedom of thought and expression. Diderot's encyclopedia is this attempt to get knowledge together, that is going to, to get this body of knowledge together that is not under the control of church and state authorities. Okay, so you want to get all of that body of knowledge together, and that's important that nobody really be in control of that. As far as that goes. So now Diderot, now Montesquieu, as far as that, Montesquieu is, the spirit of the laws. Like maybe we should apply rational principles to government, instead of these, superstitious divine right of kings type of things that have been working before that. Okay, so as far as that goes, we've got that. Now, it is afternoon over here. Okay, I know people are just kind of waking up in California. I'm going to go over a few more things here. Rotblum's class at, let's see, we got that. Now, I don't know exactly what you mean by the diplomatic revolution. Yes, hope you pass your exams and all of that kind of stuff. All right, what have we got here? We did the fall of the USSR already. Okay, we're basically getting into a lot of things that, Sonny, I hope you do well in your exam. A lot of things that I've already gone over already. Now, Rousseau, I've gotten into Rousseau. Rousseau is kind of an odd Enlightenment figure, okay? Because really a lot of the Enlightenment philosophers, shout out to Mr. Barry's class. And so Rousseau, the Enlightenment, when you think about Locke, Locke's kind of like the godfather of the Enlightenment. Government exists to protect life, liberty, and property of its citizens. Free expression, like, when you look at Voltaire, the individual should be able to express, themselves freely. Individuals should be able to express themselves freely. And so that is kind of a thing of the Enlightenment. Now, Rousseau goes from this kind of, Rousseau's not really a liberal like Voltaire. Rousseau is writing about radical democracy. Like in The Social Contract, Rousseau says man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. Now, Rousseau proposes a different definition of freedom than what you see from Voltaire and John Locke and people like that, and from Jefferson. My video on the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, I present as a dialogue between Rousseau and Jefferson, because Rousseau is like freedom is submission to the general will. Now, that doesn't go along with our, liberal ideas of freedom, but basically that if the general will is this, your duty is to go along with it. And if you can't go along with it, then, well, you just need to leave the community in some ways. You know, in the French Revolution, they kill you. Rousseau's ideas, now some people would say they were corrupted by the Reign of Terror, but there's certainly an influence on the Reign of Terror, maybe in some ways similar to, like, you know, people who are big Nietzsche enthusiasts. They're like, you know, Hitler misrepresented Nietzsche's philosophy of the will to power and all of that. But, you know, I mean, certainly Hitler read it and he did with what he was going to do with it. Probably, you know, it's probably backing up some things he already had in his head. But Rousseau, it's like when you look at the Reign of Terror, this idea that we're setting up this radical democracy, this dictatorship of the people, you know, that is something that is, you know, really a culmination of Rousseau's thought, that the social contract, he's putting the social back in social contract, that you were a member of the community. And, you know, which you think about Jacques-Louis David, who is very heavily influenced by this sort of thing, that, you know, you look at some of his paintings, like when Brutus is not looking at his sons who've been executed for trying to restore the monarchy. Brutus says his country is more important than his family. The oath of the Horatii, with these three young men swearing an oath to fight for their country and to die if necessary, that basically you are submitting to the general will. Socrates, you know, the death of Socrates also has some of these undertones, because while Socrates, you know, expressed himself freely, and, you know, when he was condemned to death, he was offered, you know, hey, let's break out of here. And he said, nope, I'm a member of this community, the general will. You know, when you look at an analysis from Rousseau, the general will says that, you know, I need to die. And so I'm not going to argue with the general will. That the version of the social contract that Socrates presents, that, like, hey, express yourself as much as you want, but if you're condemned to die, then you're going to have to die. You know, that is, you know, in line with Rousseau's thought. So, you know, in an American government class, you're not going to run into a lot of Rousseau, because his ideas aren't really compatible with the ideas of, you know, liberalism. And so as far as that, we've got, you know, good to hear from you. Any last minute advice, you know, just, you know, keep watching my videos, download my app if you'd like to, Romulus Euro. It might be a little helpful. It's just a little $2.99 app. There's also a free version. I mean, y'all have got a little bit of time, so you might just download Romulus Euro Lite, European History Lite, and just play around with it. That'd be a nice little 10 question per section review, and that's absolutely free. Okay, so there is the free version of the app that doesn't have as many questions, but you can still put it on your phone. Recommend it to your friends who are in Euro next year. So final words of advice, you know, trust yourself. I think one of the most important things that when we think about, you know, we think about that, South Elgin High School. So always so good to hear from y'all. You know, y'all are getting a shout out. Let's say shout out to SEHS right now. Okay, so as far as that South Elgin High School in Chicago, always a pleasure. My friend Ethan Culver, of course, he's not, you know, not taking Euro this year, but please say hello to my friend Ethan Culver, who got me over there last year. And again, you know, just, you know, in memory of Miss AG, you know, who left us tragically last year. Please, you know, y'all do well on your exams. And so as far as this is concerned, trust yourself. Blaise Pascal was a scientific revolution guy, and what he did, he outlined his wager, what they call Pascal's wager. And Pascal said, you know, he's thinking very rationally about this. Should I believe in God or not? Well, here's the thing, that if I don't believe, you know, basically, let's start with this. This is very logical. God exists or he does not. And so God exists or he does not. That we can't argue with that. And so he says that, you know, if God exists and I believe in him, then I go to heaven. You know, if I'm a Christian, it's true, I go to heaven. If God exists and I don't believe in him, uh-oh. And then if God doesn't exist, then whether I believe or not, I take a dirt nap anyway. So what he says is, when you look at a cost-benefit analysis, that if I don't believe in God, then I could suffer. If I do believe in God, I could gain something. If God doesn't exist, it doesn't make a difference. So he's like, might as well believe in God. So I tell everybody that takes an AP Euro exam, trust yourself. And the premise is that if you're second guessing yourself all the time, if you know enough to pass the exam, it's going to hurt you more than help you, because to pass the exam, you got to get like more than half the questions right. And, you know, if you're second guessing yourself, and you're getting more than half the questions right, statistically, it's not going to work out for you. You know, it's kind of like, you know, I'm not a statistician, but it's like when K2SO on Rogue One, you know, he's like, do you want to know the chances that she's going to use that on you? And he's like, they're high. They're really high, you know? And so when it comes down to it statistically, the better you are at Euro, the less you're going to gain and the more you're going to lose by second guessing yourself. And so if you don't have the foundation in European history to pass this exam, well, you're going to fail whether you trust yourself or not. Okay. So if you don't have what you need to pass the exam, you're going to fail whether you trust yourself or not. So you might as well trust yourself, because if you are equipped to pass and you trust yourself, you will take this exam with more certainty and more confidence, and you're going to, you know, have, less problems because of that. Okay. So as far as that, let's see, did Fatima ask me a question? Okay. Let's see if San Diego is asking me a question. I'm not sure if I necessarily got that, maybe a DM on Instagram. Okay. Let me check that. Let me check that out, Fatima, and see what y'all want to know out there in San Diego. Okay, so wow, Fatima woke up at 5:30. All right, Robespierre and the Committee of Public Safety. Now remember, you've got the radical phase of the French Revolution. The French Revolution starts off with the liberal phase. Okay, so let me actually pull up a couple things here, and just so you've got something that you can see. Okay, so when we go into this is the latest that I've got. If Quartz Hill High School is watching in the Los Angeles area, very good. Always want to give a shout out to y'all. Some of my best friends over there. So basically, the phases of the French Revolution. Understand that the French Revolution comes in phases: the liberal phase, the radical phase, the Directory phase, and the Napoleonic phase. Now, as far as that, from 1791 to 1793, we're really going from Locke to Rousseau. That really the 1789 revolution is a revolution of Locke, is a revolution of creating a government that has some constitutional limits, like a British-style constitutional monarchy that is going to protect natural rights, life, liberty, and property, and is going to build a nation. Now, 1793, you go over to Rousseau and the whole, general will and all of that kind of stuff. And so Rousseau's philosophy is, Rousseau's philosophy, the Gray fan, y'all are so fun. Like, what in the world's going on there? Nate Gray, Tom Richey, you sly dog. That's from Claire's class over there in Stewie's class. Okay, Stewie's class. If y'all haven't heard your other shout out, what a great group of people. And so basically by 1793, it's gone over to Rousseau. So the liberal phase, the dominant class, the bourgeoisie. The goals are really the constitutional monarchy, liberal reform, the abolition of hereditary privilege. The influencers are Locke and Montesquieu, liberalism and constitutionalism, and the governing bodies are the National Assembly and the Legislative Assembly. So what we see here happening in 1791, 1792 is it's transitioning to the radical phase. So 1792 to 94, you see that the Jacobins and the sans-culottes, all right, the sans-culottes get together. Their goals are egalitarianism, nationalism, and let's not forget cheap bread. Influencers. Rousseau is the big philosophical influencer, the general will. And then you've got the National Convention, which is the legislative body, and the Committee on Public Safety, which is the executive body during this time. And so you're basically going from liberalism to radicalism. And then the Jacobin clubs, okay, which the Jacobin clubs, Fatima, what they all have in common, okay, the Jacobin clubs, they are all in favor of republicanism. Now, republicanism means no monarchy. So before that, basically like what they were trying to do first is turn Louis XVI into a constitutional monarch. And so the Jacobin clubs, they were all Republicans. They were opposed to the monarchy, but you had the Montagnards, who were more radical, the Mountain, who sat in like the highest seats. That's why they call them Mountain in the assembly, and the Girondins, okay, or Girondists, who were less radical, but still Republican. Like, for example, the Montagnards wanted to execute Louis XVI, whereas the Girondins, they wanted to basically find him guilty, but not necessarily execute him. Now, of course, the sans-culottes were big players during the Reign of Terror as well. Okay, so as far as that goes, I think we got that. And the Girondists, once, the Reign of Terror starts, the Girondists the Gerondas get taken out. Okay, so Fatima, thank you so much for you and your friends for your support. Even if Erica is out there wrecking me and all of that kind of stuff. So y'all do great on your exams and all that in San Diego. All right, and let's see if there's okay. We got a few Instagram followers here. Thank you so much, G. Farrells, Sophia Davenport, Abby Gonzalez. Y'all are all great. Fatima's thanking me. Thank you, Fatima. Y'all have been so great, so great. All right. So as far as that goes, we've got that going on there. All right. And gosh, Vivi's notes are really a hit on Instagram there. Okay. So as far as that goes, we've got that. And I hope y'all pass your exam, even though y'all are expecting to fail. But we hope that Fatima makes a 5. Miss Snyder's class, the Snyder Scholars in Culver City, Ethan Culver in Chicago, Illinois, and Miss Snyder Scholars in Culver City, California. So, lots of great Culvers out there. So thank you so much, Miss Snyder, for your support and always just great stuff. When I went to LA, it's like, hotel rooms are expensive. She let me use the fold out couch, very comfortable couch. All right. So thank y'all so much. Miss Snyder, great friend. Looking forward to seeing you at the AP Euro reading. Okay. So thank you so much, for y'all's support. Okay. So, but yeah, just, great. Mr. Holloway's class. Thank you so much. Mr. Holloway's class turning into lunch, with Richey. Okay. So thank you so much. And so what have we got here? So Fillmore, California. All right. So let's see. The Paris Commune. Basically, the Paris Commune, Brittany, was something that took advantage of, we've got San Diego here. Gina, is that Fatima's class? But yeah, San Diego, great. As far as that goes, now I've already talked about women. Actually, I started with women. So if you want a woman review, go to the very beginning of this broadcast and replay it. Okay. I go into a thorough exposition of women. And so as far as that goes, the Paris Commune is a temporary socialist government of Paris that takes over in the wake of the defeat at the Franco-Prussian War. All right, so that's something important, which is quickly put down by the French government. I don't know how quickly, but not with a lot of delay, and it was put down a pretty bloody fight, street to street fighting, barricades, and all of that kind of stuff. So we've got that. Already did the Cold War. Now the thing is, as much as I love you, West Coast, I think we're getting into basically everything that's being asked right now. Miss Aston's European history class. Hope that goes really well. Amanda, thank you very much. And so from North Garland High School, LMAO. I think the last part was not part of the high school name. So we've got that. Okay. Totalitarianism, which let's see, not following. Let's see, the opposite of communism. Please help. Okay. Gosh, lots of people, the old regime. I've got something on there. Scarlet Nightshade. If you will go to my first video on the French Revolution, I discussed the old regime, the 3 estates, the clergy, the nobility, and then the 3rd estate, everywhere else. So as far as that goes, we've got that. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, I've got, basically questions coming in that I've already answered, other questions coming in from people who don't even follow me on Twitter. Let me see if I can get a couple more shout outs. Fillmore, California, Mr. Putt's class. Yes, Tyler, I appreciate it. So excellent. I'll get there at some point, Tyler. Lutheranism, Calvinism. Lutheranism is basically Luther's look, here are my 95 theses. Here are my problems with the Catholic Church. We're going to start from there, basically reforming the things I have a problem with. Calvin starts from scratch with a brand new systematic theology in his Institutes of the Christian Religion. And so that, Calvinism is, of course, they dress and all that kind of stuff. Now, another thing about Calvinism is John Calvin never accepted the supremacy of the church over the state, whereas Martin Luther during the German Peasants' Revolt, Martin Luther ends up during the German Peasants' Revolt, he condemns the peasants and says, look, I wrote that everybody's equal in the sight of God, but you must obey the temporal authorities. So Lutheranism, very early on recognized the subservience of the church to the state. Whereas the Calvinists didn't really think that. The Calvinists are thinking more in terms of, the goal is a religious commonwealth, which is when you think about the Puritans and the Separatists when they settled in colonial New England, that's what they were trying to do. So as far as that, Mary Jansen, all right, Miss Jansen's class, of course, y'all can have a shout out. So Miss Jansen's class at Duncan Polytechnical in Fresno, California. So glad that I told y'all on the West Coast that I would keep broadcasting. I'm kind of running out of steam. I've been going for 2 weeks now, and all of that kind of stuff. Cardinal Mazarin, which, gosh, goodness, people, so many non-followers asking their questions here. Nice meme, Zoltan. I think about like, dude, where's my car? Where they're like, Zoltan, they got that whole thing going. Okay, so Wisconsin students test in 30 minutes. Bread in the French Revolution, let them eat cake. Basically, you've got the problem here is, during the French Revolution, you've got this. Basically the shortage of bread, there's a shortage of bread. And, during the Reign of Terror, they're like, what? Everybody eats. Everybody is going to eat. And so then we're going to regulate the way that bread's made. So, you basically, people want to eat. That's really at the basis. And that's, of course, what causes the liberals to kind of lose control of the revolution is because, the crowd, they want to eat. They don't really care about all of the other, all of the other stuff there. All right. So Jessica Guzman out there, Sierra High School, Manteca, California. Mr. Abreu will throw us a party. Mr. Abreu, I'm familiar with Mr. Abreu. Hear that name a lot. Thank y'all so much for supporting my work over there. I'm very glad to have that. Okay, hopefully that will be the case, Matthew. I hope you're not tweeting from the test. Metternich, what was not important about Metternich, as far as that goes? So, gotcha. Let's see. Did some post-Cold War already. Also, Mr. Frazier's class, I would recommend you can search for Tom Richey post-World War II. And in about 18 to 20 minutes, I go through like a variety of Cold War, like Cold War, second wave feminism, Thatcherism, a few other things like that. So if you're on the West Coast, I'll be terminating this broadcast in just a little bit. And, look up that Tom Richey post-World War II. I give you a quick rundown of post-World War II topics. Oh my goodness, Nick Gurr. What would this be without Nick Gurr? Now, is this y'all are in AG, California? Y'all are in like SLO? I didn't know Is Nick Gurr from SLO? Anyway, I don't know but my friend Nick Gurr, it's his birthday. I tell you what, but yeah, so AG, I'm very, very familiar with AG. And so when you all watch, let's see, Miss Francis's class, I think is in that area. If they're watching today, go over the post-Cold War economy, yada, 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 the Tom Richey Euro videos. All right. Well, Sheil, I hope that goes really well in Folsom, California. Great. Mrs. Jansen's AP Euro class in Fresno. All right, so we got that. And so I really, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, it's probably about time. I think that, people are testing on the East Coast. They'll be testing in the Central Time Zone soon. My watch will end very soon. Okay, so which I'm looking forward to Game of Thrones this summer. Okay, Jessica, you can stop now. I gave you your shout out. Okay, so hopefully you've got that. Mr. Jennison's class from California, 2 more hours. I'd encourage you, watch my videos. Of course, get a hold of the Romulus Euro app. There's a free version if you want to try it out before you buy it for $2.99. It's very inexpensive. Just a little trivia app to help you go through the content. It's available on iPhone and Android. Okay, so Romulus Euro, something you might want to think about just for some last minute reviews. Okay, so don't forget about my app. Okay, so like I said, there is a free version with like over 100 questions if you just want to put that on your phone and and take a look at that. Okay, so that's available at the App Store and on Google Play. Romulus Euro or Romulus European History. So don't forget that, ladies and gentlemen. Also, just a great way to support my work and what I'm doing here and all of that kind of stuff. I give a lot of stuff out for free and, just trying to make a buck here and there. And of course, Adam Smith would say there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're helping people and you're rendering a valid service. So, you know, which I'd encourage anybody, you know, if you can run a socially responsible business, you know, go make some money for yourself, which Mr. Clifford, who does AP Economics, really made a really cool video today. It's ACDC Leadership. And, you know, just a really great video giving some life advice, and, you know, looking forward to, you know, collaborating with that guy sometime. Let's see. So give Miss Allcoins class a shout out, make you feel better, more confident. I'm in the confidence game, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, the thing is, what I would say here, Jack, one of the outside information strategies for the DBQ is what I call the document 8 strategy. You know, let's say that the DBQ were on the French Revolution and the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen is not one of the documents. Go into the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, you get your outside information point. As long as you don't just mention it, you develop that and you show how the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen could be used to support your argument, kind of like an actual document there. So I think that the document 8 strategy for outside information, I think that that's definitely, if you're thinking about, I'm going to refer to a primary source document that is not mentioned in this document set. I think that is a great thing here. Okay, so, gosh, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. All right, I already talked about that a little earlier. Oh my goodness, Jessica, how many times did you tweet that? You know, so as far as that goes, the Babylonian captivity can be kind of outside of the scope of the course. Transubstantiation versus consubstantiation. Now, remember that that is, oh gosh, Kohan's fifth. You know, that is so funny. Now, the thing is, if you think about it, one of my favorite stories about Louis XIV, okay, because Louis XIV was just like vain AF. I mean, this guy, you know, you don't get where he is by not being, right? And so as far as that goes, that there would be nobles, you know, Louis required all the nobles to tend to him at Versailles. And so the thing is, you would occasionally need a favor from the king. And so Louis, if somebody asked for a favor that had not been attending him at Versailles, Louis would say, who is this person? I don't know this person. Like, he never comes to see me. And basically, if you did not come to see Louis at Versailles, you didn't exist, like when it's time to ask for a favor. You know, so Kohan's fifth, thank y'all so much for all the support that y'all have given me, you know, for so long this year. And it's, you know, it's great. And so as far as that, that kind of stuff, all right. So, oh my goodness, looks like some people are not getting their exams started on time on the East Coast. All right. So as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, Louis XIV, it was just like, hey, he never comes to see me, and that's how Louis would enforce. Like the nobles coming to see him at Versailles, because they knew that if they didn't go to see him at Versailles, they wouldn't get a favor when they needed it. And that really kind of, you know, it's a life lesson. What I let you know, we prepare for the exam so much, we forget about the life lessons that, you know, if you are going to ask for something, make sure that you've been, you know, you've been paying your dues, especially if it's, you know, a bigger favor or something like that. You know, have you done something, you know, kind of proportionate, or are you willing to do that? Has that person ever expected something from you and you didn't deliver? So, you know, Louis like, you know, I expected this person to attend to me at Versailles, and this person never did. And so this person does not exist to me. And so that's really, you know, you learn so many life lessons, you know, so beyond the exam, you know, you just think about like, you know, I mean, now after this thing today, you can just focus on the awesomeness, you know, the sheer awesomeness of Louis XIV and Peter the Great, you know, because you don't have to take exams anymore. Thank you, Gabby and Katie and Lily and Ken and Zoe and Jessica and Ashika and Jude and Marco and Ricky and all kinds of other people that added me on Snapchat. Tom Richey SC. What an honor. What an honor. Ladies and gentlemen. So as far as that goes, and Datella's AP Euro got y'all a shout out, you know, out there, Karina and your class. I hope y'all do great on the exam. So as far as that goes, St. Charles North High School in St. Charles, Illinois. Okay, so so glad to get to be acquainted with y'all. Okay, so just gave y'all a shout out, Karina, in case y'all aren't still watching. So as far as that goes, got that out there. And let's see. Oh gosh, like a Euro teacher just sent me like, I am done. I am so done. And I'm like, I'm about to be. Okay. So my watch hasn't quite ended yet. Okay. So in a little bit of time, I will be done, but I'm not quite done yet. We still got 548 people, and where 548 are gathered, there I'm with them. And so let's just kind of keep going a little bit. Just remember, I'm running out of steam. Let's make the questions like as simple as possible, not like just like simple, like, oh, who wrote the 95 Theses or something like that? Where is Europe? But something that I can answer pretty quickly because, if y'all take that into account, that I'm really just a few minutes, just a hair away from just crashing. Aerospace Academy in Palmdale, California. Isn't that where like Afro Man's from, like Palmdale? So excellent. Okay. Thank you so much for your reviews. Sophia, I hope you do great on your test today. Now, can I use Zoltan? Zoltan. All right. Can I use Hillary Clinton for synthesis? Current event synthesis, it works as long as you know what you're talking about. Okay. The problem is a lot of people just have a cursory knowledge of current events. Remember, synthesis, just like contextualization and just like, outside information, contextualization is big picture, but there needs to be a detail somewhere. Synthesis is extending the argument, but it's nothing without a detail. So make sure that if, the thing is, like last year, there were people who used on the Bismarck DBQ, they used Trump as synthesis. I was told by DBQ readers, some of them got credit. If they actually knew how Donald Trump challenged traditional notions of conservatism. They actually knew what they were talking about, that like, Donald Trump, promotes infrastructure spending, which is typically not a conservative position. That he's bringing the conservative movement in a more populist direction. That's something. Now also conservatives, a lot of them are like, free traders and stuff. So if people brought that in, how Donald Trump was challenging traditional American notions of conservatism, then that worked. But, if it was like, well, Bismarck was German and Hitler was German and Trump is Hitler, that's not going to work. So it need current event synthesis, like the recent election in France. That could be something, if you've really been following it, then use it. I would not encourage current event synthesis, though, if you're not sure that you know what you're talking about. Dr. Pack's class, shout out. Jessica, I'm happy to. I'm happy to. All right, let's give her a follow back. Tom Richey, see this. All right, is her name right now on Twitter. Thank you so much, Jessica. Also, if Bornfeld's class is watching, if anybody from Bornfeld's class, Madeline and your friends and all that, let's, shout out to Bornfeld's class there in California. Whole class is watching. Duke Powers, there you go. I am your inspiration, Madeline. Thank you so much for that. All right. Help me, Tom. Twitter. That's so funny. San Clemente High School. Shout out to STEM High School from Riverside, California. Thank y'all so much. Can you, just like I just said, Zoltan. All right. If you haven't seen Dude, Where's My Car, it'd be a great thing to watch when AP's over. Such a funny movie. All right, ladies and gentlemen. The Black Death is pretty underrated. All right. So as far as that, Marie Antoinette say, let them eat cake? Edison High School, hopefully y'all know that she didn't really say that, that it's really, she just becomes an icon of all of the failures of the, of the monarchy. So as far as that, that kind of thing there. So AP Euro, let's see, Nadia. All right. Nadia, you're welcome. And Miss Bautista, I really like how y'all are also thanking your teachers. And that's something, those of you who are still here, please thank your teachers, because your teachers have done so much to get you prepared. I mean, I'm glad that I can help, and I'm really thankful for the teachers that support what I do and my work. And it's just, I'm really blown away by the support. But yeah, always remember to thank that teacher who is working day in and day out to help you pass this exam, where, I'm just a guy on YouTube that's like, trying to, build an online presence. And I'm glad when I'm doing is helping people, but it's really your teachers that are, they're grading your stuff. They're pulling for you all the time. Make sure that teacher gets some thanks next week. Please do. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Jennifer, you have been a star of the show today. Not all heroes wear capes. Some just have Southern accents. Okay, I definitely have a Southern accent, don't I? Let's give Jennifer a follow back there. Mr. Pickett's AP Euro class from Indiana supports and appreciates. Thank you. so much that Maddie isn't even following me on Twitter. Thank you, Maddie. Gosh, that POV is just so strong, like coming from somebody who doesn't even follow me on Twitter. Thesis lesson, Sierra. I've actually got a thesis lesson. If you put in Tom Richey thesis, or Tom Richey DBQ thesis, whatever, you can find that. Montesquieu is important because he's an Enlightenment guy, and he's giving us a rational view on government in the spirit of the laws with separation of powers, checks and balances, and all of that kind of stuff. Nationalism is about organizing based on nationality. Remember, language, the #1 most important thing binding people together. Religion, I think, would be a second place, maybe a distant second. But as far as that kind of stuff, Romanticism is about focusing on what is natural, what is beautiful, all of that kind of stuff. Oh my goodness, y'all are so funny. Name a more iconic duo, I'll wait. And it's basically me and my mug. We've got at stressed for Euro. That's so funny. Mr. Gunty, who is watching right now. Thank y'all so much, Mr. Gunty's class. And of course, Jessica, always a pleasure. I've shouted out Edison, like all kinds of stuff. Post a tennis video and rap Euro hub dates. Okay, there we go. I'll be playing tennis with Mr. Baker. Of course, his class is going to be is already testing because they're in the Eastern time zone. Gigi and Rory need a shout out. Okay, consider that you've got that. All right, so come on, guys, shout out. Thank y'all. Y'all got a shout out. You did. I've got a video, Jonathan, on the causes of World War I. Romanticism is about beauty and nature and all of that kind of stuff. There we go. All right. So as far as that is concerned, so thank you very much, Matthew, and all of that good stuff. And Rebecca got a shout out, and sure, why not? All right. So as far as that goes, we've got that. Turn that up. Okay, so reliable, hymn of the USSR. That's really funny. All right, so as far as that goes, Kyle, thanks for the amusement. And I tell you what, it's really, as far as that sort of thing, yes, phones don't exist at Edison unless it's today. Sierra Canyon, thank you so much. Warm Water Rap, thank you all so much, Julia, for shouting out to Warm Water Records. I want to give that some more love next year. Wait, Mr. Power, oh my goodness. Andy Power is your teacher? Like, that is awesome. Matt, okay, Andy Power is your teacher. Look forward to seeing him at the reading. Great guy. Y'all are very lucky to be in such capable hands at King High School. I hope I've got the right Mr. Power in mind. Thank you so much for the nice little thing there from Mr. Power's class there. Yeah, it is in California, so I'm guessing that is the right Mr. Power I've got there. Miss LeMaster's class, thank you so much for Westbrook watching and all of that. Yes, of course, Andy Power. Okay, like I'm not going to shout out to Andy Power. Michelle, not even following me, but that's okay. Well, it's not okay, but you're one of Mr. Power's students, so I'm just going to let that slide for right now. But you might want to do whatever you can to increase that score and your chances. I'd be getting superstitious right now. So as far as that, gosh, that's such an unflattering screenshot. Wee Jay. And so Fillmore, California, Miss Sebeck is the best. Please. All right. So Christian Life High School students forgot the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Mr. Bruce class, I've already got like 5 shout outs, right? Okay. So as far as that, excellent. Okay. The famine is over. Euro is finished. Einstein Academy, Santa Clarita, California. Johnny Gunty is the best from Riverside. All right. And got Sammy. That is just great. You've got some Tom Richey stuff on your Twitter right now, which is pretty hilarious. All right. So there we go. Daniela, I went to VidCon Europe. I might consider going to VidCon, in California next summer. We'll see. Let's see, where is she? She's missing London and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so as far as that is concerned, yeah, following my friend Paul Sargent, History and Memes, trying to figure out if you're from SLO, because that's kind of a running joke in SLO. Go to VidCon. Yes, Renaissance art, very, very easy to find online, Colin. As far as stuff that I've already done there. Campbell Hall, Dr. Lavoie, it's a written test, right? So only student, yes, Zoe, the only student at her school taking the exam, wishing her luck. I will look into going to VidCon. Of course, I know Miss Francis. Let's see, Thomas, tell Amina baby hello for me and that whole crowd. Daniel, Deha, go tell that guy hello for me. He is the man. Okay, yes, I've already explained Bismarck's realpolitik. But yes, AG, Slow, great people, great people. All right, so Mr. Birmingham's class, decolonization, phase 1 after World War I, phase 2, World War II. I've already got that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm seeing a lot of the same stuff. Of course, a shout out to Francis and all. Oh, I see. Okay, yes, it is the same running joke. Y'all are so funny with that VidCon thing. All right, yeah. All right, so as far as that goes, social Darwinism, basically another incarnation of classical liberalism, government and Adam Smith. Government shouldn't intervene because basically when government intervenes to protect the little guy, you take stuff away from the enterprising people, and you stop the natural selection of the economy that is driving the best people to the top. Okay, the best, the hardworking, the most fit people at the top. And when you redistribute wealth, it's just going to screw it up because it's going to take money from an enterpriser and give it to somebody who's lazy. And it's going to just mess everything up. And so Miss Eisel, sometimes y'all need to make sure I know how to pronounce this stuff. So we've got that. Yeah, okay, so shout out to Mr. Power. Awesome. All right. I've already gone over, Madeline, how to write a good thesis. If you put in Tom Richey thesis into YouTube, yes, we got that. All right. So as far as that, Michelle did hit me up with that follow. Mr. Powers class, what a great group of people. At least you got a great teacher. I have no idea who most of you are, but you got a great teacher. He actually had a hand in revising my rubric. So when y'all see, if y'all see the rubric in your class, Mr. Power actually, had some input on that. I do that a little differently than I used to. Mrs. Baggs. Okay. So Seebeck, very good. Gave me a pronunciation. Miss Seebeck. Oh my goodness, she's ticked off. Okay, so Miss Seebeck, hopefully I have unticked off Miss Seebeck. I do not want to be in the Seebeck doghouse. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Goldstein's class at Tokay High, King High School. Let's see, we out here in Slow. All right, excellent. I tell you what, Slow, y'all are great. Y'all are great. All right, so we got a lot of great people here. Nice meme there. If you're studying for AP, if you haven't cried, you aren't doing it right. Okay, the Spanish Inquisition, exactly. What is the Spanish Inquisition? Part of the new monarchies. Ferdinand and Isabella, the Catholic monarchs. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella kicked out the Muslims and the Jews. And then they launched the Inquisition, basically to cement their control over religious life in Spain. And of course, the Dominicans did it, but the secular authorities were helping. All right, Chef Jake, y'all got... Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. Y'all got your teacher a shout out, and your teacher deserved that shout out. God, wow, that's what I love seeing that. These are really the moments I like when this when this actually comes together. Yeah, Michelle, gosh, you probably got so roasted by your class for that, but then again, you kind of deserved it. All right, so as far as that, Daniela, I tell you what, just say hello to my friends over there, Haley, Amina baby, and Deha. Some great people over there. And one of these days, maybe I'll go to VidCon and Slow and all of that kind of stuff. Do a California tour going west, right? Like Peter the Great. So format for a good LEQ. Gosh, I already talked about that. It's just like, oh my goodness. All right. Yes. Yes. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Loves me so much she's not even following back. I tell you, I love those people. Everything, I look something up for my history finals, and I get an awesome videos of Tom Richey to explain everything. Love it. Thanks. Okay, thank you so much for that, Aline. Is it Abrew? Abrew? Okay, Abrew. Okay, so gosh, I mean, it's a written test, people. It's a written test. Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex, for watching this, even though you don't have to. The thing is, Jonathan, I don't try to game the exam. I don't try to guess what's going to be on there. That's Russian roulette. That's loading a chamber and pointing it at yourself. And so really more like loading 5 chambers. And it's like, well, if I'm right, I'm good. Point the revolver at the exam and just unload it on it. Okay, be ready for anything, and you will be able to do anything. Okay, all right. So I easily. That's how the name is pronounced. It's pronounced a brew. Okay, a brew. All right, it's like I'm learning. People are telling me how to speak English. Okay, Mr. A brew. All right, so we got that. A brew. A brew. Okay, so yeah, I think y'all got your shout out. Y'all can shut up now. All right, so focus on your test now. Mr. Herons, Mr. Herons, you know, we got that. Let's see, we got Jenna and Katie. Excellent, watching that live stream. Tom, Richey, thanks for y'all promoting this. And let's see. Let's see. That sort of thing. Yes, no exists in medicine. Let's see. Sierra Cat, thank you so much for water wrap. Thank y'all. Y'all are okay. Great, great, great. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's almost 1 o'clock, and the Central Time people are probably walking into their exam right now. And let's see what Andrew's got for me. Oh my goodness. Oh my Lord. That is pretty funny. All right. So Andrew, I tell you what, that was a pretty funny meme there. Just retweeted a meme by Andrew. It's already been pretty popular with his follower base. So that is just hilarious. Okay. So that is just, wow. Okay. I mean, there's no better honor you can do someone than to make a meme about them. I mean, really. So as far as that goes, you know, that is just really, really funny. Okay. Watching me right now, Mr. Panabaker, he's the best. Okay. So thank you. Remember, always, you know, always appreciate what your teachers are doing for you, because they're working really, really hard on that positivism. Let's see, Pathogen or whatever, Zoe, whatever your name is, Bay Area, California. Take a look at my video on Auguste Comte. If you put in Tom Richey positivism, go into that. Okay. And so, yeah, you know, I might think about it. I don't know how many people really take the late test. So I think kind of after today, I'm done. So you'll probably have to rock it. Aiden, you'll probably just, you know, do that. So Miss Bautista's class. Okay. Thank you so much, Noe, for your support. You know, so let's see, puts class need help. Okay. So Colin, what's the deal here? Yes. Okay. So as far as that goes, already got something on the Renaissance art. If you look that up on YouTube. Okay. Gosh, y'all are like really getting me into, all right. Y'all might want to just, ABREW's class. Y'all might want to just like post a little video on Twitter, record a video, post it on Twitter at me, and then I'll, you know, be able to say it right or whatever. But you better do it quick, because I'm about to get off of here. Connor, I love you too, and your whole class. All right. Let's see. Thomas Murray. Why not? Why not? AG, we got to stick together. AG Slow, we got to stick together. The dictator, Steve Buscemi. That's really funny there. All right. The AP test's in a few hours. All right. So shout out, let's see, Joshua. Shout out to Joshua. Mr. Sheridan's class from LaSalle High School in Pasadena. Let's see, Jerupa Valley out there. We all about to pass thanks to your videos. All right. Thank you, Sammy. All right. Looks like I might have gotten it right. 14 points. He doesn't even go here. Oh, that's hilarious, Adam. That is a really funny meme. I'm going to retweet that. 14 points. He doesn't even go here. All right. Woodrow Wilson. Let's see, as far as that kind of stuff here, I've gotten a lot of ads today. I'm not sure I'd even be able to find somebody there, Jessica. So we'll see what we've got there. JESSIEE. Okay, let's go over to Snapchat. Why not? Why not? Okay, they've certainly been active. So not sure if I'm going to be able to find that. JESSIEE. Okay. Now, did she add me? I guess. Let's see. JESSIEE. Let's see. I'm having to just basically like put this down. STYLESS. Okay. So let's see. STY. Okay. And let's see. All right, let's see what they've got for me. All right, so let's see. And now I've got a few recent ads on Snapchat, which I should probably recognize. We got Mia, Josie, Damien, Pierce, Matt, Logan, JM, period, M5, Andrew, Jonathan, Tate, Alicia, Angel, Mitchell. All right. So the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, we are winding down. I'm winding down. It's about time for me to, to just crash and take a nap and all that kind of stuff. So Jesse, let's see this little video here that y'all made for me. Okay.
Stupid. Oh my god.
Whoa, Abrew, stupid. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, Jesse, gosh. Okay. So we'll go ahead and let's just block her. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm not gonna block her. All right. So I'll just remove her. All right. So as far as that goes, got that. And let's see a snap from Vivi and that whole crew in San Diego. Let's see what we got here. What happened here? Oh gosh, was that Melissa? Oh my Lord, people. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you know, if y'all are on the West Coast, watch my videos, buy my app, all of that good stuff. And thank y'all. Okay, and especially those of you who are teachers who are supporting my work. It's just like, I mean, that is just incredibly, like, that's just a huge honor that there are teachers that, you know, I mean, this is just like, I really don't get it, you know, but it's very, very honored, very flattered, all that kind of stuff. But please, students, make sure your teachers are thanked, because, you know, in a lot of cases, a thankless job these people are putting in and day out for you. Remember to trust yourself, because remember, if you can't trust yourself, you're going to fail anyway. If your preparedness for this exam is not worthy of you trusting yourself, you're going to fail either way. If you are prepared enough for this exam to pass it, you might as well trust yourself. You've got nothing to lose. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, I do AP US history. I also do a few things for AP government. I don't teach that course every year, but I've done it. You know, I do it most, like some years. But AP US history, I will be here for that. So, you know, make sure that, you know, this journey is not over for many of you. So keep that in mind, and I will be back, and y'all go and kill that exam. Just unload on that sucker, and, you know, just, yeah, make some fives and all that. That one class that did the little, like, you know, me doing the fives, like the Salt Bay, like, make sure that that happens, that we see some of those. And once again, thank y'all very much for all of your support, and all of that, all of you West Coast and AG and SLO, Southern California, Bay Area, you know, all that. I almost sound like a rapper now, you know, just going up and down the California coast. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, my watch is ended, and I am going to go eat some lunch or something like that and take a well-deserved nap. It's always a pleasure, AP Euro.